Welcome to BS Session 104 with Aratech Research, where today we hope to answer the question, are those level 4 plates? And if so, what does level 4 mean?
This right here has the ability with a 30 caliber clip to disperse with 30 bullets within half a second.
Just when I think you couldn't possibly be any dumber.
You're listening to your weekly dose of BS, Ballistically Speaking, the Ballistically Speaking podcast.
Woohoo!
How was that for an intro?
Pretty good.
I missed the whole intro thing. How many weeks has it been since I've been on?
2 or 3, I suppose.
It's been a while.
It's been too much, guys. Too much.
Mm-hmm.
I should be home until SHOT Show now. I shouldn't be traveling anywhere else until SHOT Show. But I've really missed the intro. I like the intros. They're my favorite part.
We try.
Good.
So welcome back, Chris.
Oh, hey, thanks.
No problem. But we also have some other esteemed guests with us. So
there's other people on the show?
We got other people and a bonus guest.
Oh, fantastic.
Wait, was that me? I'm the bonus guest?
You were the bonus guest. We didn't tell anybody you were coming.
Oh, all right. Well, here I am, bonus guest.
I love how we just had a moment of silence there. I think we were all expecting Mike to follow up on his comment.
I was kind of hoping that someone else was going to continue talking, and then I was like,
pause. Yeah.
Somebody jump in, please.
Pause for dramatic effect.
Why don't we do this? Now that we have paused for dramatic effect, why don't we have our three esteemed guests introduce themselves, starting with whoever speaks first.
Simon, over to you.
Okay. Hi, it's Simon from Aratech Research. I'm here with Sean, our GM for Aratech Research. And we're here today to cover some subjects on armor, what's real, what's not, what's important, as well as what Made in Canada actually means to us, people on the front line.
Hey, folks, it's Sean Steep with Aratech Research. I guess he's already done the introductions. We'll leave it to Earl.
Yeah.
No, Sean, you're up. Do it. Go.
All right, go it is. The armor industry is something that kind of holds dear and near to my heart. I started in the armored car industry in 91 when you were looking at armor that thick, and that was level 1 or level 2. It has come a long way since then and really kind of upset at Canada and what they're getting in the way of armor these days. And definitely looking forward to straightening that out.
Very cool. Now it's Earl's turn.
Awesome. So my name is Earl Green. I'm the owner and operator of Phaseline Green Tactical, where we engage in quite a bit of firearms, use of force, and general security training and law enforcement training as well. My background when it comes to this is I'm a former law enforcement officer. I served with one of the largest police services in Canada in the province of Ontario. In that capacity, I was an instructor. I was also involved in research and development and was a detective and things like that. I moved on from that and I worked in nuclear security, where I was a tactical team member and team leader. I was also one of the trainers in that capacity. And I was about 2 years ago, I was the director of business development for a very, very large equipment manufacturer that manufactures police and military equipment. In fact, I was the business development director for Canada, and one of my portfolios was soft and hard armor, both here and in the United States. So that's kind of where I became involved, and I've known Simon for quite a number of years, and just recently I left my position with, it was Safariland Group. And actually, I've become involved with Simon, and I've been looking at what's going on with Aratech Research and how I might be able to help there, especially in the Canadian market, to dispel some of the misunderstandings that are going on within the market.
Very cool. I'm really excited for you guys to be here because I don't know diddly doodah about armor, probably like a lot of the people who are going to be tuning in tonight. So I'm really looking forward to Mike asking you a plethora of questions and me learning a whole bunch.
Good. Good.
That is the plan. Chris, should we get the bills paid and get that out of the way?
Oh, if we have to.
I
You want me,
guess we
you want,
do.
you want me to talk first?
You can go first. I allow it.
Okay, well, this is probably the point in the show where we let everybody know that we are brought to you by callsign 66, Canada's best rifle training. Welcome to the Brotherhood. Book a course now at callsign66.ca and follow them on Instagram at callsign66. That's SIX, and on Facebook at C/S66.
And we are also brought to you by Ribstone Gunsmithing, craftsmanship done right. Contact Oscar at ribstonegunsmithing.ca and breathe life back into any firearm.
March Scopes Canada, the Dion optical design line of rifle scopes, has a scope for all of your hunting and shooting needs. Find Doug and Nisa at marchscopes.ca.
And Apex Optics. When you buy Apex, precision comes standard. Check out all of the fine competition rifle scopes, red dots, binos, and accessories at apexoptics.co. The Atom Infusion red dots have arrived. Get yours today. Also, they are teasing everybody on social media about their Black Friday sale, which I can't remember if are they announcing it tomorrow, guys, or are they announcing?
I believe it's the 29th to December 1st or something.
But they're announcing what it is sometime soon, and I don't know if it's tomorrow or if it's next week when they're actually going to tell us what they are. But they were teasing us earlier today, and so now everybody's on the edge of their seat.
So subscribe to the email list; they'll get you with all the information.
Faux shizzle.
But of course, we don't stop there. We also have our friends at EM Precision Rifles in Vegreville, Alberta, building Canada's finest precision rifles. Find Shane and Steve on Facebook, Instagram, and on their website at emprifles.ca.
Bolt Action Coffee, bringing specialty coffee to the precision shooting world. Order coffee and merchandise at boltactioncoffee.com.
And Odell Engineering. Pick up a Canuck shotgun or a Bergara rifle from your local distributor and tell them Phil sent you. Look them up on Instagram, Facebook, and on their website, odellengineeringltd.com. And I don't know how, but we are missing our other sponsor, which would be Sterling Arms International, home of the Sterling Arms R18 Mark II and soon to be R18 Mark III and R9. Both are coming soon, looking to be shipping I believe the first month of the new year, if I've got that correctly. And you can find Sterling Arms on Facebook. It's SAI, was it SAI Owners Group, I think. And you can find them. What is Sterling Arms' website, guys? I usually read this stuff, and
I thought you were the one heading up that endeavor.
SterlingArmsInternational.ca.
Yes, there you go.
Yeah.
SterlingArmsInternational.ca.
Okay. So now that we got that out of the way, Aratech Research. Who are you? How did you start? And why did you start? Let's start off with that.
Well, I'll jump into that a little bit, and then Sean can add some stuff because he remembers things I don't. So Aratech Research was a company that I started about 4.5 years ago. We've been selling armor through various capacities for years. The issue is that when people really need it, whatever the reason be, international policing, whatever, the armor industry is always behind the ball on that, especially with plates. The quicker you can make plates, the better. But obviously, you don't want product like that sitting on the shelf. So I was buying product for another Canadian manufacturer, and he was deciding to retire, and his main gig was designing vehicle armor. So I basically purchased the IP, and the equipment from him, and as well as a plate that was currently certified. But a lot happened in the industry, and it took us about 3.5 years to get certified with this particular plate. So basically, we just wanted to make a Canadian-made plate that was available in quick response to any need or requirement within our purview. Obviously, that's mostly Canada, but obviously shipping from Canada worldwide is easier than shipping from the US. I'm sure other people have more information on that than I do, but we noticed that from just being a purchaser and reseller of armor. What we came to realize is that there's a large amount of people selling plates that weren't exactly what they say they were. So we kind of doubled down on that and wanted to make a product that did meet spec and was available. So that's the basics of where we're at. We have a couple of investors and myself and James as the primary owners. James is our engineer, who's not here today because he has a real job. And then, of course, Sean is our GM and first contact for business and business development for retailers and wholesalers.
So, do you guys primarily deal with the civilian market, or how does that work?
No, not at all, really. The issue is that when you're dealing with serious customers like law enforcement agencies, government agencies, NGOs, and stuff like that, more on the NGOs and international stuff, they really don't know anything about armor. So when there is this sort of internationally known, requirement, specification, certification, which NIJ is, they kind of leave heavy on knowing that if it has an NIJ certification, then it's good to go. Because that takes the liability away from that particular agency. Some more of the liability away from them by knowing that the product has been certified by a protocol. So most agencies won't buy armor unless it has at least NIJ certification. Other agencies have specific requirements. The Canadian government doesn't have certification on anything, but everything's built to their spec. So initially, most of our sales were either international or to non-government agencies, simply because they don't buy stuff that's not certified. But we have sold a fair amount overseas and to some agencies recently now that it was certified.
So for those of us who are completely ignorant when it comes to body armor or certifications and the like, what is NIJ certification? Like, obviously it sounds like it's a standard, but what is it?
I'll let Earl grab that one if he wants to, because he's probably said this 1,000 times and probably has a pitch for that.
Going for 1,001.
Right. So the NIJ certification basically is a National Institute of Justice certification that is basically, I guess, it's a U.S. government standard. And so what has occurred with this is that the U.S. government, through the National Institute of Justice, has gone and found quite a number of experts in terms of various items and areas of purchase for law enforcement and military. And therefore, what they have done is they have gone and they've put together a set of standards that would involve testing and ballistic levels or protection levels for various things. And it's not just armor. I mean, at one time, NIJ was looking at holster retention levels and things like that. And Safariland was one of the key drivers in that. However, the NIJ didn't adopt that. When it comes to armor, what's occurred is that originally NIJ came out and looked at, here's what we're going to do in terms of we're going to test soft and hard armor to certain standards to defeat certain threat levels that could be met mostly by law enforcement. And that really is, because it's the National Institute of Justice, that's what they focus on, is law enforcement. So it's kind of evolved over time. I can't remember the exact year that it started. For some reason, I believe it was between 82 and 86. It's evolved. Everyone right now is familiar with NIJ 06. Well, we're now on NIJ 0123, which was the latest standard that came out about 2 years ago. And so what that was a modernization of the standard from NIJ 06 that dealt with both soft and hard body armor. So it would include things like, soft ballistic panels, hard plates, and helmets. And so what they've done is that they've come out and they've looked at testing criteria that surrounds the protective level. So, i.e., what they've got is that a plate or a soft armor panel must withstand so many shots of a particular caliber at a specific distance and at a specific velocity with a specific bullet weight. And that's how the certification comes around. The good news is that about 2 years ago, when the new 0123 standard came out, they really kind of simplified it, and they said, okay, so we've got HG1 and HG2, which is handgun 1 and handgun 2, which replaces NIJ level, basically level 2 and level 3 for soft armor. When it came to hard armor, they looked at what was it? It was RF1 and RF2, and RF1 and RF2 was basically level 3 and level 4, because really there was no point in focusing on level 2 and things like that below that. So that's what NIJ did. And so what happens is that if you want to get a certified piece of armor out there, you have to take it to the NIJ or send it, and it has to go through a number of tests. Now, those tests don't just involve, putting the armor up on a stand and shooting it. It involves conditioning the armor, and one of those things about conditioning the armor is various temperatures. In some cases, the armor is placed in washing machines and tumbled for about 12 hours, and then placed on a ballistic testing fixture. But what people don't realize is that ballistic testing fixture, regardless of whether it's soft or hard armor, has a clay backer. So what it does is that clay backer mimics the anatomy of the human body. Now, it doesn't include bones and things like that. That's not what they're looking for. What they're looking for is that the fluid density of human flesh. So what occurs is they will shoot the panel or the plate or even the helmet, and then determine what the back face deformation is. So the back face deformation, basically what this is that when the round hits the armor, we know that armor is designed to dissipate the energy of the round. But what also occurs is, as a result of that, it causes the armor to bend inward. I mean, that's just a given. It's got to take that energy and soak it up somehow. Right. So what occurs is that armor pushes into the clay. So if you figure this on the human body, what it would do is push into the body and could cause bruising, internal trauma, and things like that. What they do with that then is they measure the depth of that back face deformation. And of course, based on science, et cetera, and biology, they look at, so generally the standard is, less than a centimeter of penetration before it fails. So, and I can't remember right off the top of my head what it is. I think
it's 40 millimeters max on a level 4 plate. I think it's 40 millimeters.
I believe you're right. So 40 millimeters, when you think about it, 40 millimeters is actually 4 centimeters. So it's penetrating hard. Now think of this, is that in the clay, it stays. In the human body, because the human body is elastic and fluid, it pops in and pops out. If you think about, if you hit ribs at 40 millimeters, it's 4 centimeters. So we're looking at 2.5 inches. You're busting ribs. You're causing internal damage and things like that.
Yeah.
Fair enough. You might survive. The other side of it that they're also looking for is, does it penetrate? And so that's the key thing when it comes to soft or hard armor, is primarily we want to avoid penetration. And then secondarily, we want to avoid, hydrostatic shock or the blunt force trauma that comes from being shot. And so that's what they look at. So what they do when they test armor, so let's say it's a plate, they will have a shot placement template around the plate that will deal with things that on the edge of the plate or close to the edge of the plate, on the center of the plate, et cetera, 2 centimeters apart, that type of thing. So that's really what NIJ does.
So it's not just about will the plate itself stop a bullet within reason. It's about how does it stop the bullet and protect the actual human being that's wearing it. Am I reading that right?
That's exactly right. Now what's interesting is some of the misconceptions that have come out there. So So we look at plate, some of the times when we look at, especially now with plates, many of the plates are laminated armor. So what happens is that you've got, Kevlar interface, Kevlar and polymer, or those types of things, or Kevlar ceramic polymer. And so they're all kind of sandwiched together. They're glued together, that type of thing. They have a cover and things like that. And so what happens with those a lot of times when they get hit, they'll delaminate because of the elastic shock of the hit.
Yep.
Right.
What's also happening, though, is we're hearing a lot of people talking about, and it's interesting, since I came into the armor world, I've heard all kinds of people talk to me, well, I'm just going to go out and I'm going to buy AR 500. Oh, okay. Here's the problem, though. So take a look at who's using AR 500.
Yeah.
No one.
There aren't very many military organizations or police organizations in the world that I'm aware of that are using AR 500 for a couple of reasons. Number one, AR 500 is extremely heavy.
Yeah.
The other side, when you shoot AR 500, the good news is that it's probably not going to penetrate, depending on where you bought your AR 500 from. And I'll tell you a story about that. I was on a course a couple of years ago. A guy had all kinds of AR 500 plates up, and we were burning through them with 5.56.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
But then the other thing with AR 500 is that you whack AR 500 with a regular copper jacketed ammo and things like that, or a steel cord ammo, it spalls. And if it's a curved armor, it spalls upward if you hit at the curve that goes towards your chin. So
Right.
it takes all of this, the jacket, the core, et cetera, and fires it right into your chin and your throat.
So you might still have lungs, but you're probably not going to have any lips.
You're going to die bad.
It's going to hurt a lot. And this is the thing where I talk to a lot of people that, I can't afford laminate armor. I'm going to buy AR 500. And what I say back to them is you haven't shopped well enough. And you really got to look around, I mean, you're right. Your face is too pretty for spall. And this is the thing is a lot of us look at, all shooters, and I don't care, it doesn't matter how much money you've got. Like I've talked to actually a guy I met recently who's a billionaire shooter, and yet he's cheaping out on stuff. And I said, you've got the money, buy it. On the other side of it, I also say to people that don't have the money, then save your money and buy a life-saving thing.
Yeah.
That makes sense, and we hear the same thing. I recently had to recertify for CPR, and you hear CPR guys saying this about tourniquets all the time. It's like everybody's going out and buying tourniquets on Amazon, buying tourniquets on Wish and stuff. And then, when you hear about these people that are trying to use them in the field, and they start to twist the rod and the wire snaps. Because they bought it on Wish or they bought it on Amazon, and everybody's like, oh, I don't want to spend $49 on my tourniquet when I can spend $29 on my tourniquet. And it's like, well, I guess my life is worth $49. I guess yours is only worth $29. As long as you save that $20 somewhere, I hope you got some good coffees with it.
That's a big thing on our retail side with our other business. We sell a lot of medical supplies. Chris Karp, who founded CTOMS out west. We've been doing business with him for years, both on the government side and through retail. One of his managers recently left to pursue other careers, but he sort of opened up the retail side for businesses to be able to buy stuff. So we were one of his first sort of test subjects to get products like that into retailable areas. Because CTOMS is, it's a huge company that does everything from training to import government stuff. They're a WHO and Red Cross supplier. But what he wanted was people that actually knew what they were buying, what they were selling. We even have a little KFC bucket. Are we past the 5 minutes yet? We passed?
Yeah.
Oh,
We have a KFC bucket upstairs. It's got a whole bunch of...
Go for it.
A whole bunch of used TQs and fake TQs. We call it the bucket of fuck it. We have guys come in, cops. We'll buy the base here, so we get the reserve guys come down, and they're like, I just bought 3 of these off eBay, and I'm like, that shit, you need one of these. And they're like, well, I can't afford it. I'm like, give me your Chinese knockoff, and I'll sell you one of these at cost. They're like, thanks, man. And then they
Wow.
keep the Chinese knockoff, and I'm like, no, it goes in the bucket. Right? Some of them come in, they got a little experience, and they have this TQ or that TQ. I'm like, you need this one. It's one of the only ones you can deploy by yourself. Remember, individual first aid kit means it's for you, right? Trauma bag is a different thing. So we're really heavy on that. And on the training side, we're like, if you're going to be shooting and wearing armor, right, because your training is that dynamic, you should be wearing a first aid kit. There is no exceptions. And they're like, I can't afford it. And I'm like, yeah, you can, right? One piece at a time, just like me, right?
Yeah.
I built my go bag one piece at a time. Every time something was on sale, I put it in there. 5 years later, it's a $2,000 go bag. It's got everything I need in it.
Yeah. It's funny how we can spend thousands of dollars a month on ammunition, but we can't spend a couple extra dollars on safety equipment.
Well, the thing is how much is it worth when you need it, right? Like my best pocket knife and my best full combat knife is in a bag that I never use, because if I need it, I need it, right? But it takes experience to do that. And it's not that I always had money. Like there was times where I was making minimum wage, but I was doing a lot of interesting things. And I thought, if I screw up and I need this kit, it better work. And, armor, medical equipment, safety equipment, it's all the same thing. It's easy to say don't be poor, but there are deals out there, right? We offer deals for people. We do packages. We do payment plans, for the civilian side. We get law enforcement guys want to buy stuff and then it's not approved, but they want to buy it anyway, and that may get them into trouble. And I can't really speak to that because I've never been on the policing side, but there's always a way to do that, right? There's always a way to do that. It just depends on whether you're likely to be in a situation you're going to use it. If you think you are, then there's a good chance you may need it.
It comes down to how much do you want it. Exactly what you're saying. If you really want to get the piece of kit that's going to potentially save your life someday, whether it's an accident or otherwise, maybe sacrifice the coffees for drink coffee at home for a couple of months, or maybe cancel that YouPorn subscription that you've been meaning to cancel, whatever it happens to be. I mean, everybody can save a couple of bucks a month and save up money to get the things that they need. There's not much of an excuse otherwise, really.
No, I mean, you've got your recreational spending, especially if it's not work related. I mean, you just got to choose it. My wife buys stuff almost every day. I don't buy anything, right? I wouldn't have jeans if it wasn't for Christmas, right? But then I'll go out and buy $4,000 for night fishing. I'll buy, a $6,000, Night Force Attacker optic instead of buying a Vortex. But that's like a once a year thing. But it means I've got a lot of really good shit and not a lot of crap, which is kind of the way I like it, right? Back when the ARs were a big thing, they're like, well, how much better is your Knight's armament than, a Colt? And I'm like, not that much, right? But it's a nice piece of kit, and I got 18,000 rounds for it, and it's never failed once. I like that. But $4,000 versus $1,400, right? But normally I'd say, well, how many guns you need? I've got 5 of them, so that's kind of bad. But, toys and stuff. But, I mean, buy good kit, that's the way to go. I mean, everything in life, no matter what you're into, when you have more money, you never say, oh, I'm going to go to, Walmart and buy a towel. You're like, everything is always better, right? The difference is if you're using something and it's your thing, right, then spend the money on that, right? But you can always find a way. You're going to be better with money. Or what I do is, if my company can't pay for it, I don't buy it. No.
Also, throwing it out there, if Justin Trudeau's cutting those checks,
oh yeah, man,
make sure you invested in gun stuff.
That's that's the most sound financial advice you're going to get on any podcast, let alone our podcast. We've got a question for one of our listeners, but before we get to it, I kind of wanted to follow up with NIJ, because I had one more question about that. And it sounds like what you were saying. Like, obviously, it sounds like a good standard to be judging, body armor by. But what I was wondering is, like, this is a non-governmental standard, right? Like, do governments adopt this standard, or do brand names? Like, how exactly does, like, functionally, how does the NIJ fit into the industry?
So in the United States, NIJ is actually a governmental standard, and it's
Okay.
accepted across the board for pretty much every law enforcement agency across the United States and Canada. The other certification that may come into play is actually CE certification in Europe, which we're seeing that with LBA and BAE Armor over there. That are two of the key players that are based in England. There's also another key player in Germany, and I can't remember who it is at this point in time. But NIJ itself is pretty much a North American standard. What's interesting, though, is that in the Middle East, they actually follow the NIJ standard as well. They don't follow CE, although they will buy things that are CE certified. So basically, consider it like Canadian safety standards or CSA. NIJ, when it comes to law enforcement armor, is the way to go. And what's interesting is in Canada and in the United States, there are so many misunderstandings surrounding NIJ. For example, back to the duty gear thing I was talking about, I dealt with a very large organization here in Canada that was buying holsters, and they were like, "Oh, well, these are, is your holster NIJ certified?" And I actually had to say to them, the holster certification under NIJ never happened. It was in draft form, and it was actually us at Safariland that shut it down and said, "No, we're not 100% convinced that this is a good standard." Okay. Back to armor, because of the research, development, and science that's gone into ballistic and armor testing, you can be guaranteed that when you're buying armor that is NIJ certified, you're buying armor that has been stringently tested and is also subject to being recalled, i.e., if one of those pieces of armor fails in the field, every single piece of that armor gets recalled. And that's not the choice of the manufacturer. That's NIJ telling you you're off the list. All of that armor has to come back.
Yeah, until you rectify it.
Yeah, and it's happened with major manufacturers. Safariland had it happen. One of the major players here in Canada had it happen as well. And really, they dealt with it though with and I would say this with candor in terms of, yeah, we have no problem. We'll pull it all back and we'll replace it with a current NIJ standard or standardized item at no cost, because that's really what it comes down to. And it does come down to it's the safety of the people that are wearing it, whether it's, again, their primary focus, like I said, is law enforcement. But when it comes back to civilians, you'd be foolish not to buy something that's NIJ certified. And it's interesting. I hear, and I look at forums here in the United States and Canada and things like that. And I've talked to, I used to converse with every law enforcement agency in this country. What was interesting was I would hear, yeah, we're going to buy armor. It's level 3 armor, but it's not NIJ certified. What are you doing? Buy it.
Why? Yeah.
This is law enforcement agencies.
Excuse me? Sorry, Chris?
This is law enforcement agencies telling you this.
Oh, yeah. There was a major law enforcement agency here in Canada that got caught up in a situation where they bought armor that was basically rebranded from China and was failing in terms of even a basic ballistic test on hard armor. And then they were looking at us and going, "Well, can you offer us a discount?" And it was like, "Well, no, we can't."
There's a reason for that.
But what we can offer you is that if somebody shoots at this plate, it might actually stop it.
Yeah, and it's funny because there are some major players that are actually sanctioned by the Canadian government, and I won't tell you who they are because I'll probably get sued, but there are some major players that are sanctioned by the Canadian government for procurement that are actually involved in very shady deals and buying things from China. And you really have to ask, can I see the NIJ certification on that? Or can I see the CE or CSA certification, depending on what the item is? And really, it's one of those things where, it's consumer beware. But of course, the procurement practices in Canada are so messed up anyway that, this is the specification that we want, but we want the lowest price. Well, I'm sorry, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
This is the specification that you want, and this is the price.
Yeah.
And so for a lot of organizations, you've got to go out and do a lot of research and come back and talk to people in the know and set your certification to the particular product that you want. because really your financial and procurement people are going to follow a standard that says, oh, well, it has to meet exactly what we wrote in the request for project kind of thing. And that's where you need to be careful. And NIJ actually helps you with that, because if you come right out and you say, well, the plate that we're going to buy has to be, let's say RF2. RF2 rifle threat. Oh, okay. Or it has to be RF3 rifle threat 3, which would basically be the old level 4. Then they can actually go to, there's actually a compliance list that NIJ has out, and you can go down. So in the case of Aratech armor, you go to the NIJ compliance list, you scroll down, there's Aratech armor with a level 4 offering. That's NIJ certified, and it tells you what date it was certified, and it tells you the specific plate that is certified. And so that's where you can go, okay, so that's the item that we want. And then what you do is you go back and, thickness, sizing, various sizes of plates, because not everyone, for example, not everyone wears a 10 by 12 plate. Some people wear an 11 by 13. Some people wear, an 8 by 11. And so that's one of the things that you have to look at is it certified? Has it been properly tested? And basically the responsibility back on Aratech is that every product that comes out has to meet the exact specification of the materials that they had said that they would manufacture with. And every one of those plates is then deemed to be NIJ compliant.
Yeah, one of the things that we did is, because we've picked what's known as SAPI or eSAPI, which I think is one of the best style of plates, especially a triple curve or multi-curve, because it fits the body better. It's tighter towards the neck. It comes in towards the abdomen. Is that we submitted a series of plates in every configuration within that spec. So basically from 8 by 10 all the way to eSAPI large, which I think is slightly smaller than 10 by 14 commercial.
Correct.
And we were basically told, if you want to do this, you have to submit for testing the absolute smallest plate that you plan to make. And we're like, well, why? It says because, you look at an impact on an 11 by 14 plate. It's obviously going to be much easier and less backface deformation due to the mass of that plate and the mass of the ceramic core. So we're like, oh, I see. So, and that's basically how we did that, is, within that offering of sizes. One of the things that we like the most is the fact that we're actually doing it slightly different. We're using a one-piece ceramic core. A lot of companies use tiles, but the problem is there's a limitation as to the shapes that you can actually make with the tiles, because if it's an exaggerated curve, then the tiles don't always touch 100%. I mean, there is use for tiles, but ours is a very exaggerated triple curve plate. It's almost like a Roman breastplate. It fits the body very well. Now, obviously, if you're not in shape, it may not fit it, but round is a shape, right? But what we like about SAPI is it's actually a little bit skinnier inwards from side to side, and a little bit longer. I do believe it was the U.S. Marine Corps that had done the study on this. I think it's called SAPI, which stands for Small Arms Protective Insert. eSAPI was like advanced, which sounds weird or something, but basically a level 4 versus level 3. But it's a lot easier to wear because you can bring your arms closer, and it's a little bit longer. Most American soldiers are a lot bigger than other people, so the chest area or the protected area was sort of a little elongated. But I mean, there is a million shapes out there, but it seems in most of the upper end armor industries and plate carriers that the eSAPI size was most requested. Unfortunately, we still get a lot of people ask the 10 by 12s, and we have made them in the past, but we would prefer to sell the eSAPI shaped plates because I think they fit the body the best in the sizes that we have.
That's really interesting stuff, and this is probably a good segue to get into your product specifically. However, right before we do that, Scotty Chitchell was asking this question quite a while ago, and we kind of put it on the back burner, so we'll ask it now. He says, I've heard that you can't drop ceramic plates. Is there truth to this?
I'm going to let Sean take this one for a bit because he's getting a little bored here with all of us talking. The funny thing is, like, we talk about this daily, so we're all speaking exactly the same things, the same questions. But I'll let Sean take this one.
So, absolutely, with our plates, you can drop them anywhere you want to. We've got no problem dropping them in front of the camera if you'd like to. What I can't do is X-ray it because my X-ray vision doesn't translate to the computer.
That's okay. Mine does.
Does it? All right. Well, here, watch. Here.
I can tell you it's 100% what you're saying is 100%.
We do this at the show all the time.
So we're going to drop it on the end, right onto that corner.
Yeah,
right?
edge hit.
No problem with it. Right?
I can confirm that fell.
We do it at the show all day long.
Yeah.
We've done this and then taken it to the range to shoot it. No problems at all. Now, there are different types of ceramic. So each ceramic has its own robustness, if you will, right? The type of ceramic we're using here is not going to do that, but it's a great question and one we get quite often.
One of the things I did when we built these plates is like my goal was like hard use plates. People like, a lot of people will just treat their stuff like crap if somebody else has paid for it. When I was in the military, if you got caught treating a piece of kit like crap, you paid for it. And I don't mean financially, in every possible physical harm that they could do to you without actually murdering you, with the intent that you should look after your kit. Not to really bang on policing, and I've never done that. So, this is not a police dig, but the way that most police officers look after kit that they're issued, a lot of them, it's like open the trunk, throw it in, there you go. We wanted to make a plate that was kind of what we refer to in the military as infantry proof, right? So we made it very tough. We actually have got very high density foam, very thick, high impact foam on the front and the sides, with the chance that either somebody hits the deck and concrete, and for things like dropping it on the floor. It's not a requirement, but I have broken lots of plates by just dropping them. A lot of companies, they get away with this by not having the ceramic go all the way to the edge. All right. Some of the tile plates, they can be even an inch close into the center before the main ceramic tile starts. Reason I don't like that is you're not getting the full coverage. And two, that's basically it. You're not getting the full coverage for the plate you're wearing. But it does reduce the chances of the plate getting damaged by dropping. So we wanted to get, our plate, if it's 10 by 12, has 10 by 12 actual ceramic coverage. And then we have our 3 to 5 millimeters of high density foam on the exterior. We've done things where we put just the foam on the plate and dropped it from our sea container. It will bounce, right? Which is amazing for a plate that weighs basically 6 pounds. Yeah, we've got, so basically, if you want to have a look at this, this is basically our ceramic insert. So you can see from the curve.
So just that basic ceramic, just the ceramic.
Yep.
Can that be dropped on the ground?
Yep.
It's a little loud, but
now if you drop that on concrete, well, actually that's concrete with,
I don't know, there's no cracking, there's no denting.
Yeah.
Right.
But
obviously it is still ceramic, right? But
so like everything else,
all of the material that goes into making the plate actually gives it the ability to drop, right? We also laminate with a proprietary procedure on the front to even once the plate starts to break, generally under ballistic impact, that it holds it together. You'll see in a lot of high-speed videos that when the plate gets hit, there's a massive amount of ceramic that comes back out. That happens, but I've looked at our plates being shot with 10,000 frames per second versus ones with a different manufacturing procedure. And there's a lot less ceramic coming out of the impact zone with the way that we make these. There's always going to be a Ford Chevy type scenario, single piece versus tiles. I'm sure everybody has an opinion in the armor industry on that. We just realized that the larger piece of ceramic that the projectile hits, the greater chance of it surviving that. And again, with multiple hits, you're still very large sections of the plate will remain somewhat intact. I found that when I've shot plates that are made of small tiles, you get the impact zone and everything's disintegrated. That's going to happen on any plate that has ceramic insert. But the tiles around the blast zone or the impact zone, they get dislodged or they just come off, which then you have zero protection when it comes to the rifle. Most of the time with the one-piece ceramic core, we end up with very large sections that are still capable of taking a full rifle round that the plate is rated for. Again, that's just our experience. I'm not a ballistic expert. Maybe Earl has some more thoughts on one piece versus, multiple pieces, i.e. tile system. But we wanted a very exaggerated shape. When we were prototyping tiles, we found that the gaps were getting bigger and bigger as the curve started to happen.
So let me just get back to Scott's question for a second there about, can you drop ceramic plates? It just depends on, I guess, Scott, it depends on when those plates were made or how long they've been in service. Now, what's interesting is that, so plates that were made, let's say in the early to mid 2000s that were ceramic, if you drop them, yes, the possibility exists that they could crack. That doesn't necessarily mean that ballistically they're no longer protective, but they are cracked and they should be X-rayed, et cetera, et cetera. But here's an interesting thing so one of my partners at Safariland was actually the armor expert for all of Canadian Armed Forces. And after Afghanistan, they pulled a lot of the plates back in that were a ceramic composite plate. They were ceramic polymer, they were ceramic Kevlar, I believe. And they X-rayed quite a large number of those plates. And one of the things that they had found, and these were plates that had been fielded in combat conditions. So obviously, if you think about a soldier, at the end of the day, you drop your kit, you drop your kit. Some of these plates had been dropped numerous times. And what they were finding was that very, very few of them were cracked. And so you just saw, an interesting demonstration by Sean where he drops the ceramic piece and nothing happens to it. And interestingly enough, I'll bet you if we X-rayed that right now, we would find that the integrity is not compromised. And when you think about it, the plate itself is not the only thing. There's plate, there's Kevlar laminate, there may be polymer laminate or whatever in there. And I'm not going to speak in terms of what's in the Aratech plate, although Simon explained it to me. I'm not 100% conversant on what's in there. But again, when you think about it, that ceramic core is surrounded by Kevlar, it's surrounded by adhesive, and it's surrounded by foam to protect it, which again does a number of things as well in terms of mitigating spall and things like that. So when you look at this, modern plate technology generally is not subject to cracking or breaking when you drop it. Absolutely. And so that's kind of my long-winded answer to that whole thing is old technology. Yeah, you drop an old plate, you're probably going to crack it. You drop a new plate like Sean has there, nothing's going to happen.
Yeah, and this plate is relatively heavy in comparison to some of the higher end plates that are out there that is using UHMWPE as a backer. So I mean, and it's a fairly hefty plate. But we wanted to make so-called military level plates. On our testing, like the NIJ testing for backface deformation and for multiple hits, we kind of went a little crazy. It far exceeds anything that would meet the protocol for NIJ. We really wanted to overdo it, just simply because we wanted to make it last. Yeah, there's a lot of thought that put into it. It does make it a little bit heavier than some of the other ones in the market, but our main sort of goal for law enforcement was as an active shooter kit. Now, if you're a high speed, low drag kind of guy, you're stacking buildings, doing the ERT team stuff or some kind of secret squirrel type scenario, this is not the plate for you, and you're not going to be issued to that, right? These guys are in the sub 1 percentile, either in the police and or the Cansoft type community. They're not buying this. Years and years ago, I was in business with a good friend of ours at the time, Darren Cole, who owned One Shot Tactical. And we had some really high-end lightweight plates in from Germany. And they were this was it's got to be 12 years ago now, something like that, 10, 12 years. And they
12.
were $3,800 American. Now that was our
God.
retail price, but I remember we had like $3,000 into them. And one of the guys from the base came in and said, who the hell pays for that? And I said, nobody pays for that, right? The government pays for that because it's going on $1 million guy and a $10 million chopper on a $100 million operation, right? But you're in single digits for the guys that run that stuff. What we're looking at here is a general purpose, general issue plate that could handle any threat that most law enforcement or soldiers would run into, which at this stage, level 4 is up to and including 30-06 armor piercing. So that's basically what we wanted to do. There has been some pushback on the weight a little bit, but again, if you're wearing this 12 hours a day, there's a specific requirement for that. You're talking
what is the weight on your plate?
Weight on the standard ESAPI is, depending on the configuration, 10 by 12 versus ESAPI medium. You're looking at around 3.1 to 3.4 kilos. Right.
And that is how many more kilos? Like you said, it's a little heavier than like other types. Like how much?
I would say, like the average sort of full level 4 plate is running what? 2.4, 2.6?
Yeah, you're looking at anywhere from 2.6 to about 4.
Right.
Can I just add? Let me just add 2 things to what Simon said here too, Chris. Is that something that people don't understand is, and this is one of the things that I ran into when I was in industry, was I hear a lot of stuff about, oh, well, we're NIJ compliant. Sure, that means nothing. You need to be NIJ certified. And almost all of the plates out there that are NIJ certified exceed the NIJ certification. At present, we're talking about level 4. Now, level 4 is NIJ 06. Now we're into NIJ 0123, so level 4 now is actually called, RF3. So rifle threat 3, which is, in that particular case, it's actually designed around 2 things. Number one, it defeats M855, so 62 grain penetrator, and it defeats 38.6 armored or 30-06 armored piercing, which was kind of the they look at that, and 30-06 armored piercing is no longer commercially available. NIJ actually hand loads it to travel at 2,800 and 2,880 feet per second, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But what we're looking at now, and especially for police officers, et cetera, is that, and this has kind of been the mindset from the 90s the early 90s, when I first was a police officer and they started issuing armor, was, oh my gosh, we have to protect you from your own firearm because you're most likely to get shot with your own firearm. Okay, sure enough. But then when it got into the rifle thinking, when we first started the carbine programs that were out there, which started in probably the late 90s, early 2000s, that same thought process came around. So, but now what we're looking at is, and it's interesting because most police services across Canada are issuing 2 things. They're issuing either, M855, 62 grain penetrator, which makes no sense because it was designed to defeat Soviet body armor, or they're issuing Hornady TAP, which makes a lot of sense. But I've actually heard from police administrators, oh my God, Hornady TAP, that's crazy. That's it's designed to kill people. And it's like, no, it's designed to stop threats. That's why it's there. And that's what your police officers are trained to do. And so when you look at, for example, Aratech, as being a Canadian manufacturer, it doesn't just meet the NIJ standard, it exceeds NIJ standard for RF3. And that's what you've got to look at, is that many of these organizations, they're being told, well, what you need to defeat is, 3030, 303, et cetera, et cetera. Yes, that's one level of threat. But I'll tell you what, in a school shooting, and this has been there's documented evidence on this, on some of the entries that have occurred across this country, in some cases, depending on the training level or the experience level of the tactical unit, they do get into blue on blue and they shoot one another. With an M855. And I can tell you of one service here in Ontario that has 2 shootings in their own service, a small service, where they've shot their own people on entries. And it's like, what are you doing? So really looking at it,
Yeah.
you want to look at, okay, so we do need to defeat, you know, what's going on out there and what are the main calibers that we're going to run into in Canada? 303, 30-06, 30-30.
Absolutely.
But the other thing that we're seeing too, and if you look at, so I used to be an expert in school shootings and threat assessment and that type of thing. When we would look at shooters that had perpetrated school shootings in the United States, we don't have very many here. In fact, we've had a few over the years, but not recently. But when we were looking at the type of ammunition that they have, well, in many cases, they had 55 grain ball, or they actually did have 62 grain penetrator. And really, what was 62 grain penetrator designed for? Defeat Soviet body armor.
Right.
And then, by extension, defeat police body armor.
Right.
And so what I would say to clients in policing is then you buy the thing that is going to protect your officers from the most prevalent threats. And I do tell people one of the most prevalent threats is 62 grain penetrator. And you know, someone will say, oh my God, that needs to be banned. No, it doesn't. The chances of being involved in a shooting like that are, you know, you get hit by lightning twice and you win the lottery. Good for you.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, sadly though, you ended up in a shooting, and that's really one of the things that comes into play. But you know, looking at the plate that Aratech has just come out with, and honestly, I wouldn't be here, you know, as much as I've been friends with Simon for many, many years, Simon and Darren and those types of things, and I owe my business to Darren. If I didn't think that this thing had wheels under it, I certainly wouldn't even be here talking to you guys tonight.
Well, I certainly understand what you're saying when you at the beginning of what you were saying, there was a difference between being NIJ certified and being NIJ compliant. I mean, compliant just means that you read their standards and you say that you're meeting their standards. Certified means that NIJ has guaranteed that you are meeting their standards, and I can see a very big difference,
physically tested,
an accountability difference, if nothing
well,
else.
not just good point, Chris, and not just guaranteed. It's gone through the testing protocols at Wichita to verify that it meets to a very stringent testing protocol.
Right.
And so one of the things that I've found with many of the armor companies that come out and say, you know, we're NIJ compliant, and when I've asked them, even myself, so how did you test that? Oh, we went to the gravel pit, we put it on the berm, and we shot it with a 308, and it didn't delaminate. And it's like,
yeah,
but you didn't have the clay backer, so you don't know what your backface deformation is. And that's one of the key things when, if for the people that are listening to this, ask what the backface deformation was when they tested it.
Yeah.
Because that comes back from NIJ. And if the company goes, well, we don't know, well, then they're not certified. They're compliant.
Yeah. One of the things,
that's the government telling you that we did something wrong, but don't worry, we're investigating it.
Right.
Well, yeah, the check is in the mail. You know, I love those kind of things, right? Like,
yeah.
Look, one of the most insidious things that I see when we were at TACOM, let's go there. We were at TACOM last year, the year before. We walked around the year before, and this year we had a booth. We'll have another one next year, so come on down, see us. But shameless plug there. One of the problems that I had was I was walking around, and what's more insidious about, the compliant, not compliant thing is they're saying that, I can look at you and say this plate is certified, right? When I walk into these booths over there, they pull out a piece of paper from Oregon Ballistic Labs, or one of the big three anyway, that's down in the States, and they turn around and go, here, it meets certification.
Yeah, so I'll just add to that for a few seconds to cut Sean off. So what some of the people are doing is they're playing word salad. So they'll do what Earl said, is they'll go out and they'll shoot it, and they'll do a little video, right? They're like, oh, look, it stopped the bullets. People are, oh my God, that's amazing. And then some of them will go so far as they'll take a single plate, if they're making it themselves, or they'll just grab one Chinese, rebrand one, throw a sticker on it. They'll send it to one of the labs, and they'll shoot it with one round, right? No conditioning, no drop, no wet test, no multiple submissions, just one round on a plate, and it doesn't penetrate. And they say, we've met the NIJ protocol. You've met one of 42 things that they do to that. And the other thing with body armor is you have to test dozens, if not hundreds, of plates or any piece of armor to get the average of what that test is. So the only way to make a good product exceed or at least meet NIJ standard is to overdo them. Shooting one plate, anybody can win. It's the a broken clock is right twice a day scenario. So they come back with this nice long technical data sheet from this big lab that says we are an NIJ certified testing facility, blah, 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 blah. And it's got all of this like word salad that most people don't know, so many feet per second in inches and in this direction, whatever. And they put that on the table and say, meets that. Joe Blow comes along and says, oh, wow, they sent it to this lab in America and they shot it like this and they got high-speed footage and they shot it with an armor-piercing round and it's great. That's just as good, right? No, it's not. And, there's lots of things that people aren't expert, but they get just a little bit of information and they think they don't know what they're talking about. Then I say, well, how much is that from? Let's really throw somebody under the bus. Can Armor in Ontario. It's a straight up Chinese-made product that they relabel. They're like, oh, look at this company. It's got all this fancy videos and everything like that. And they've got this nice certificate, but they're $400 and yours is $1,200, right? So you're ripping me off. I'm like, no, we're saving your life, bro. Right? The reason that it costs so much is one, the material and the quality, and the fact that this particular plate, I've got 3.5 years and $1.6 million into getting where we are here today. Right. And that's a lot of money for a small company like us. But I know that plate works. So there's a lot of fake stuff out there. There are other companies in Canada that are putting hundreds of thousands of dollars into videos and actors and helicopters and all sorts of shit. They're not making them here. Right. I know every single armor manufacturer in this country. Right. Most of them I know personally. And there are some that are making them here, but they're just bringing in raw material from China, pressing it together and taking their luck. There's no guarantee of the materials. So that is something that we kind of want to get out there, is that learn it, right? Why is this, and what's the difference between NIJ tested or NIJ, what's the other one? NIJ, what did it say?
Meet NIJ certification.
Right. Yeah. This little sticker that's on here, right? It says NIJ listed. That's the word that everyone used today. And I've made this mistake a lot myself. NIJ certified is a phrase that they say that's been through the full testing procedure and it meets the certification standards set out under NIJ 06 as it is. NIJ listed means that it's been through all of the procedures, everything else, and NIJ themselves have listed it on their approved plate, right? The other thing that happens too, and I'm not going to throw this company under the bus because they used to sell their product, is they have one plate that is NIJ certified, and they have 20 or 30 other armor products that's never even been through protocol testing. What I mean by that is they haven't set it down to submit it, and it's failed and come back. They've never even taken the time to submit the dozens of plates that it takes. And everybody says, oh, they're a Canadian company. They're making certified body armor. They have one SKU, one, right? And that everybody's buying their stuff, and they're selling it for a premium price. If it's that good, then get it certified, right?
Isn't it funny that we'll our government will get involved to ban Kinder Surprise eggs because they're a choking hazard, but it seems like it's buyer beware, Wild West when you're talking about armor body protection.
Yeah. So what I found out from my business partner who's in production engineering is that the Canadian government's definition of what is made in Canada is absolutely disgusting.
Oh, right? It is for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the old USDA certified organic phenomenon.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Who certified
organic? Yeah.
Don't forget though that armor, really what you're seeing, the federal government itself, the only experience that they have is CAF and RCMP. They have, and CBSA and everybody else follows on their coattails.
Okay.
What happens though with CAF and RCMP armor, when they write an RFP on armor, they specify how it will be designed. Right. So DRDC a lot of times will do a lot of research and then come back, no, this is exactly how this will be composed. And really they'll do their own testing after they purchase or prior to purchase, that type of thing. So really the government itself doesn't give a crap about armor. The provincial governments or municipal law enforcement get lost because in many cases they're left to their own. in Ontario, a lot of times what happens is everybody goes, "Oh, the OPP is they're the experts on it." I came from the OPP. No, they're not. I can tell you who the experts are in the OPP. There aren't any. and it's funny because they'll talk about, well, we relied on what the OPP was buying. They went to the lowest bidder. The lowest bidder.
Yeah, they bought theirs in Temu.
Some of the organizations out there, for example, one of the most innovative police services in Canada is actually Vancouver. And Vancouver many times goes and really does a lot of research before they buy things. But again, back to my key point, when it comes to armor, the feds themselves don't care. And in terms of setting a standard that would protect the consumer, you've got to remember that the feds don't want to protect the public. They want to protect themselves or protect their buying interests. So,
Right.
so the armor thing for the feds is they just turn it over to the RCMP and CAF and go, well, you guys figure out what you want to buy. And CAF, luckily, well, both of those organizations have, the ability to go to DRDC and say, hey, this is what we want. But the funny thing is a lot of times you could take like a plate, like the Aratech plate, and put it in front of them, and they would go, that's the one we want. Then what happens, though, is when personalities get involved and go, well, I'm friends with somebody at another armor company, and that's how it works. Like this country,
Good old nepotism.
Yeah,
completely. And it's just, having worked for Safariland, like it's unbelievable. I walk into a police station and I was a rock star. Oh my God, the Safariland guy is here. And I'm like, dude, I just had breakfast. I've got a hangover or whatever's going on. I'm not a rock star. I'm here to sell you something today.
But I did say
But that's how they
about-
look at it, as opposed to. But I was always bring it back to, this is how the product has been tested, and really, as Simon stated, there's probably only Simon, 2.
I think there's like 4, technically speaking, 4.5. It depends. There are a few companies that don't sell to the public or really to policing. They're mostly on the military side, and there's one that manufactures here and exports only. But really, I mean, you could fit everybody in a small Tim Hortons, right?
Yeah, you could.
Legitimately making stuff here.
You could, and we all know one another. That's the funny part, is that we all communicate and talk. And I can think of one of my competitors in the soft armor industry. Well, every time I saw the gentleman, I had lunch with him, and we had great conversations, and we're friends. And mind you, that's another side of being a professional businessman, which Simon is. So,
guys, I find this stuff super fascinating, but we do have 2 questions from some listeners that I want to fit in, and Mike and Derek have a series of questions that I think are really good, that I would be I'd be being an asshole taking up all of the wind if I didn't let them ask the questions.
Just a quick FYI, we're frozen on this end.
Can you see us?
Oh yeah, we can see you.
Okay, good. All right.
As long as you can still hear us, right?
Yeah, we're good there. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. So our first question came from Jonathan Bergen. He says, what is your design for backplate?
So are we talking like a soft armor? Or are we talking about like what is the back?
The back of the plate, like what's the construction here on the back side as opposed to the front?
I'm assuming that that's what he means.
So basically, that's a whole lot of proprietary information.
Yeah.
But what I can tell you is there's ballistic material on the front and ballistic material on the back. This here, for lack of, or just to generalize, the front side is mostly for spall and anti-spall and slowing the round down. The ceramic is what's dissipating most of the energy on impact. And on the back side is basically a catcher's mitt to get all of the spall, get all the other stuff that got through some of the ceramic, or basically what the backside. So most of the hits that we see, it's the backside, the back face of the ceramic that kind of crumbles but doesn't make a hole. And then everything gets caught into the ballistic materials on the backside of the plate.
Yeah.
So there's no like padding or anything on the backside of plates, is there? Like that's
no. So like I've seen some plates where there is a physical padding there. I'm not really sure what that's about. I would imagine maybe it's comfort, but I mean most carriers, by the time you put your plate in a carrier and then you're wearing your OTW shirt or a jacket or whatever issue kits you have, and you got mags on, like there's a fair amount of soft material around the exterior of the plate. But I have seen some plates that do have that foam. The way I look at it is, if you're going to have any thickness in the plate, make it ballistic related materials. Yeah. Don't just put a piece of foam on it because it feels nice. Right? If you want to do that, put that foam or that padding or that suspension on the carrier.
Also, it wouldn't be functional. It would be more.
No, I mean, any material that is going to be on the plate, with the exception of making something somewhat drop proof, should be ballistically related.
Quite honestly, if you've got a pad that's attached to that plate on the backside of the plate, having worn armor for most of my adult life, if that was attached to the plate, that plate's going to be rank.
Yeah.
After a while, there's really no way to clean it.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So anything in the way of and there are aftermarket devices out there you can put in behind that to give yourself space for breathing.
Yeah.
And then that takes up the layer that you're going to wash.
Gotcha. No matter what you do with armor, wearing plates sucks. The whole idea is that, do you get to go home to little Johnny at the end of the day? If that means you're going to smell like ass and it's going to be uncomfortable, well, then hit the gym harder. Right.
Sorry, I need to clarify the question. Jonathan responded here. He said he meant an ESAPI. I think he spelled ESAPI wrong, but that's okay.
Yeah.
ESAPI plate that goes on the back of the human. He means the actual back plate, not the back of the plate.
Oh, the second plate on the back of the person?
Yes.
Yeah, so it would be exactly the same as the front. ESAPI to the front, ESAPI to the back.
Yeah, gone are the days of having a square plate in the back and a shape plate in the front. That's like Bosnia level old at this point. Most plates today are shaped same front and back. There are some exceptions, but generally both plates are exactly the same.
So that curve on it doesn't make a difference then?
No, actually.
Here, I'll tell you what. Just turn and face that way, right?
Yeah. Don't forget,
right? There's really no space.
Right.
Yeah.
The curve is where your shoulder blades are.
Yeah.
The plate is designed to protect your heart and lungs.
Yeah.
So to answer Jonathan's question, you could technically buy a rectangular plate to put in the back, but honestly, you might as well just stick with a regular, a regular shooter's cut plate for the back, because really, if it hits you high in the shoulder, it's going to hit, the scapula and things like that. It's not going to hit heart and lungs. And that's what plates are designed for. One of the problems that I see with a lot of plate users is they run their back plate too low. Mm-hmm. And you'll see a lot of people that'll run it down where actually the top of the heart and the top of both lungs is actually exposed.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, really?
Look at any police TAC team, you'll see people on those that are deployed with their plates running too low, and that's a carrier design issue.
Yeah,
they're just trying to protect their kidneys.
Well, a good friend of myself and Earl, I'll just throw him in there, Goose, he's been there and done stuff. And he's been pretty good recently, but in the past, he would find random pictures or random videos of police, military from all over the world. And he would basically take a Sharpie and say, this plate's too low. It needs to be here. It needs to be that. That said, he's medic trained and he's done a lot of stuff in his previous career. But he was always getting called out by saying, hey, man, why are you shitting on these guys that are out there saving lives? It's like, they shouldn't be doing this. If you're going to wear plates wrong, right? Plates are to cover absolute vital areas. If you're going to wear them wrong, don't fucking wear them at all, right? It's not benefit, right? Wear it correct or don't, right? Because you're not protecting the only parts that are important. Having your plate at your waist, right, is pointless, right? I mean, obviously, if you get into a physical or really hard situation, but you shouldn't be you shouldn't be at go time getting out your vehicle or whatever with your kit ill-adjusted, right? But that takes experience and dedication and fitment. I mean, if your kit does not fit you well, it's not going to perform well.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so we have Scotty Chitchell was asking, are there any level, I guess this would be RF3 under the current specifications, if I'm correct about that, Earl, groin and side plate options? I don't know who's kicking him in the groin, but
right, from us, no. Currently, because we make our ceramic plates from one piece, we would have to have a completely separate ceramic core. If we were making them out of tiles, then yeah, we could just whip up a few plates that would be your side plates. I wouldn't even entertain the concept of doing groin armor with a ceramic unless I was doing EOD type stuff. Again, that's something I know nothing about, and I know that Earl does. But in the future, we'll have many offerings, including side plates. Nobody wants to make side plates. They don't make money, and hardly anybody really uses them. But we have been asked many times. So there's definitely something we want to do. Groin plates, we do actually make soft groin armor. This is actually one of our Kevlar products.
Here. Can you hold that up again?
Yeah, one second. So what we've got here basically is almost exactly the same width as our plates, right? So it will go in a pouch below there. And then we have our side armor. Now this is 3A, right? So it's up to 44 Magnum. We actually use a proprietary epoxy resin for this. So it's what we call semi-rigid. So that also helps for things like stab, needle, blast mitigation, because blast fragmentation reacts differently than projectiles. So there's a thought, of course, that wearing side armor basically covers this section of your body, because the penetration here is the same as the penetration here. Right. But wearing rigid level 4, level 3 plus side panels really restricts your breathing and your movement. And again, if it's not against the body, it's not really doing anything. So we make a fair amount of these, and that gives some form of protection in the side area. Our groin armor basically is very flexible, because basically it just bangs around right there if you're standing vertical. My experience wearing this was breaching doors when I was in Northern Ireland, because you're standing with 12 gauge, you're blowing doors and various other reinforcement things. The chances of getting hit in the groin or in the femoral area is higher, right? But you're not likely to take a rifle around there, but there's a good chance a good chunk of metal or brass is going to hit you in a bad area. From a first aid point of view, doing field first aid into the leg and groin area is very, very difficult. I'm not a medic and haven't played one on TV, but all the guys I know that are in that position or that role are saying it's very difficult to work on somebody who gets an injury in that area, and you can bleed out really, really fast, exceptionally fast. So groin armor is great if you're in a situation where you're likely to get really more of an entry thing, where you're likely to get fragmentation or right there. I mean, they're using a lot of it in the Ukraine because fragmentation has become probably the biggest killer, drones and whatnot. But it is only soft armor. So you look at fragmentation and up to 44 Magnum. Just to give you an idea, one of the carriers that we make through one of our other companies, that's basically what you basically see there. There's nothing in there, but that's sort of the coverage you have. I don't think it would be feasible to make rifle-related armor that fit there. Again, Earl will probably be better to answer that when it comes to the, bomb disposal type scenario. But for our policing and military customers, that's probably about the most protection that you're going to get.
Does it really affect dexterity to wear even a semi-flexible plate, like right in the between your legs like that? Does that really affect dexterity, or?
I think it just bounces off. I mean, I've worn it. Yeah, it flaps around basically. Like, it's great when it's standing vertical, but it doesn't really get in the way. I've tried. Sometimes we'll run like chem lights or a TQ off of that. Chem lights is quite common. You're going through rooms and marking what's cleared and what's not cleared, or nice out of the way kind of scenario. But I haven't really run into a situation where it's kind of got in the way and made it difficult to do. Even if you're running, basically your legs just push it out the way.
Okay. When I was doing tack work, I took mine off. I never wore my groin protection. Maybe I'm foolish. I don't know. When it comes to hard armor, I'm sorry?
Did you ever wear side plates?
Yes.
Okay.
Just for a couple of, but here's the funny thing is that what I've been looking at recently about side plates and some of the recent research on that is more about frag protection and things like that. And it's interesting because there are other soft armor options out there For example, Hardwire out of the United States, which is owned by Safariland, has a very, very dense, soft armor package that is extremely light and extremely thin, but extremely rigid. That actually we tested it when I was with Safariland and worked with MedEng. We tested it and determined that it did have fragmentation qualities to defeat frag. Now, there's a very different standard for fragmentation protection for EOD work than there is for soft or hard body armor. And I worked, one of my areas that I was responsible for with Safariland was MedEng, who makes the bomb suit that you see everywhere. Like the most famous, the Hurt Locker and things like that. And, now it's the EOD-10E, which is the most famous bomb suit in the world and has better ballistic protection fragmentation protection than anyone else. You can shoot a bomb suit and the bullet will go through it. Why? Because the fibers are developed differently. And, and the hard armor that goes into it, or the composite that goes into it, is different because again, when you look at fragmentation, we're looking at, not only we're looking at frag, we're looking at heat, we're looking at blast, we're looking at fire. So that's a different thing. To get back to Scott's question, the interesting thing too is that side plates and groin plates, if they are the exact same composite as the chest plate, then they don't have to be NIJ certified because they're assumed to be NIJ certified because they're the same material. Now myself, I look at side plates and my thought process is okay, so do I take a round from the side? But the problem with that is that even if I have a side plate, I still have this massive open area that's a complete entry point to my heart and lungs, which in the Miami massacre of April 1986, we did see people getting shot under the arm and taking fatal hits because of it. And even, it doesn't matter what armor you have now. If you had soft armor that covered all that, it would be uncomfortable. But this is one of the problems that a lot of people look at side protection. It's interesting. I was watching a video by Agilite yesterday, and they were talking about side protection for frag. Yet there was a video right after that where they were talking about tunnel clearing, and it's minimal ballistic protection other than plates front and rear because of the tight confines.
Right.
So to get back to what Scott's asking is, I guess it comes back to your application and what do you need. My suggestion would be this: if he's in a role that's law enforcement, then get Armor 2.0 shaped armor that overlaps on the sides and things like that. Wear your plates in the front, and then you've got your soft armor on the side. Chances are most of your threats are going to be front and back. They're not going to be side threats unless you're running from your threat and trying to shoot backwards. That would be the main thing, I would think.
That makes sense. John Brigham had another question, but I think when Mike and Derek get to go roll through their list, they're going to touch on that for John. So I'll skip over John's question. We'll go to one last one from our listeners. That's from 1AB. Says, would you prefer a multi-curve in AR-500 or 600 steel? And it sounds to me like you're going to say no. And you're going to probably recommend ceramic, but why don't you guys take that one away?
I would say at this point, considering that the price of ceramic composite armor has come way down, and there is no real reason to buy AR-500. I will qualify this by saying years ago, we through my other company, we did manufacture AR-500 plates, anti-spool stuff, and we also went so far as to, your truck bed liner, your Linex, whatever. We actually used Kevlar and fiberglass, and then the truck bed liner over the top. And it made a significant difference with the fragmentation for the first 1 or 2 rounds. So people are like, oh yeah, but if you shoot many rounds, it gets worse. Well, reality is you're not going to get shot 5 times and be in the same place. Like, you've got to be really unlucky or really dumb to stand there and let somebody shoot you 5 times.
Nobody's doing the Tony Montana last stand off the balcony.
No, and realistically, if somebody's firing a burst from from something at you, they're hitting you in other places.
Yeah.
So the other thing too, from a metallurgy point of view, is AR500 is very hard, right? Abrasion resistant stuff. So when you curve it or bend it, you create stress fractures in it, and then generally you would X-ray it or reheat treat it. A reheat treat in AR500 or AR600 is not very successful, which is why things like bulldozers, instead of bending or shaping a bucket, they weld it, right? Because AR500 doesn't work very well when you try and form it into something else.
Sounds like
So
you're adding a consistency variable into it. That you
right,
just
absolutely.
want.
And then if you look at it from a financial point of view, if you formed and shaped into multiple curves an AR500, AR600 plate, and then reheat treated it and stress relieved it and then checked it, you'd be into $1,500 for something that basically is going to spoil like a mofo after 1 or 2 rounds. So even from a financial point of view, it is pointless doing that, especially considering you can buy a good set of plates for $1,000.
Right.
Yeah, AR500 is great for tanks and various other things like that, where fragmentation is not on the human. And again, I qualify this by saying we made them in the past, and we tried to make the best AR500 plate that we could. It's just is not worth the juice, not worth the squeeze. And again, you can buy good plates for a little bit more than what an AR500 plate will cost you.
Right. That makes sense. Holy cow, Mike and Derek! Did I ever soak up the room on you guys? Hey,
you're just making up for your lost time.
I know, right?
So
I should be on consistently every week so that I'll shut up once in a while.
I kind of have one. What are the challenges of stopping a tipped round versus a non-tipped round?
Go ahead.
Well, I guess, it comes down to the threat protection level. And really challenge-wise is, I guess if he's looking at the construction of the plate,
that's kind of what I'm referring to. Because you have that little, obviously, hard piece of the bullet. How does that change how you design a plate, so to say?
Well, absolutely it does.
Mhm.
It changes a number of things, and I can't speak for Simon, nor do I want to speak to anything proprietary surrounding any of the armor manufacturers that I worked for. But again, when it comes back to, it's interesting in some cases. For example, I had one client that I sold level 3 plates to that were tested level 3, but we hadn't tested them to level 4. And we found out after selling them to the client that they almost made level 4, with the exception of they wouldn't defeat 30-06 armored piercing. However, they defeated everything else, including M855.
Mhm.
But it wasn't multiple hit on M855. And I actually took it back to the armor experts at Safariland and said, this wasn't supposed to defeat M855. And they said, absolutely not, but it does. And I went, yeah, it's doing it. Now, that was back to the test methodology that the client was using. But we also looked at it and we went back and we said, yeah, some of these lots were actually doing it and others weren't. So we had to, it was a level 3 plate. And we couldn't go and say it was a level 4 and it would defeat M855.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the things. So yeah, there are differences in thickness. There's differences in the internal materials and it could be the tightness of, if it's a Kevlar weave, the tightness of the Kevlar weave, the number of laminate layers of polymer, or the number of laminate layers of ceramic that go between each Kevlar layer. So in answer to the question that's where it comes in, is that the science behind it, and I'm certainly not a scientist, has to surround, how many layers of each material go in to defeat a certain thing, which is, I'll tell you what, there's formulae for that, and I don't know what they are, and even if I did, I couldn't release them. But that's one of the things. And so to answer that question, I guess, yes, each plate is constructed differently, but not as different as you would think.
Okay.
I don't know if that's an adequate answer, though.
Yeah, no, that's a good answer. Just kind of, it was one of those things. I'm kind of a physics guru, and just kind of that science and interaction has always interested me. And obviously, just a cup and core lead jacket bullet versus one with the tungsten tip, and in physics terms, that's a big difference in density and hardness.
Well, it's interesting too, because you have to look at, and really in a lot of cases when rounds in armor, we're looking at, for example, things that you would think, like a lot of people will say to me, well, shouldn't a level 3, or now what do they call it, an HG2 panel, soft armor panel, defeat 5.56 because it defeats 22? And it's like, no, it's a totally different thing. It's traveling faster. The bullet is pointier. It's got a higher viscosity when it hits. So it pushes, fibers out of the way as it penetrates, that type of thing. And really that's what it comes down to, is you're looking at aerodynamics, velocity, and viscosity when it hits. But as well, you're looking into, so what is the weave of the armor designed to do? It's designed to take a more dense bullet cross section versus a non-dense bullet cross section and spread it out. And so that's kind of some of the things that you have to look at. And it's, again, the science is just so, like, it's the coolest thing in the world. But I'll tell you what, I've never seen a soft armor yet, including hardwire, defeat a 5.56. Just because
we actually tried that just for fun. We took like 100 layers of laminate Kevlar, right? Glued and compressed it to like 1900 foot-pounds of energy. And I shot it at 20 yards with an M855. I didn't have anything clay that we had left that hadn't been shot. So I put it on a CF issue plastic jerry can, fill it full of water. The bullet hole was exactly the same size as it's a projectile. It went through it like it didn't even exist.
Not even any expansion.
Yeah, and $1,000 worth of Kevlar thrown away. But just to prove to myself that, because people have asked me, if I like double, triple, quadruple stack this, will it stop at 50 BMG? I'm like, no. Right? It's like, yeah, but it's like it's going to slow down. I'm like, well, it just doesn't work like that. The whole idea of the ceramic core is to dissipate that energy immediately, and then the rest of the backing material does what it does. But I just wanted to test that myself, that if I stacked, 10 inches of Kevlar, would it stop an armor piercing round? No, it doesn't. It just makes a very expensive hole in a lot of material.
Yeah, an interesting analogy I kind of put to is there was a time where I was just out in northern Alberta, and had set up some steel targets, and it was just plinking out in the woods. And one of my targets, the backer, was essentially a tree, and it was a pine tree, and it was about 9 to 10 inches in diameter, and there was a few stray rounds that went clear through that tree, like nothing happened.
It's interesting because, Derek, there's a really good, if you ever read the book Black Hawk Down, because one of the Delta guys actually, in his interview with Mark Bowden, actually talked about how he was shooting people in the street and watching the rounds pass through them and not slowing them down because they were using M855. And the people that they're running up against aren't wearing armor. So it's not slowing down. And that's one of the things to look at, is that what is it designed to do? And it's funny too, because I talked to another buddy of mine who is ex-US Special Forces, and he was talking about when they were shooting people in Afghanistan with a 77 grain, which is not a penetrator round, but it was blowing chunks off people.
Yep.
And so it comes down to taking, ammo management as well, as what is the, it's like hunting, matching up your ammo against what you're going against.
Yeah.
And really, I've tested ammo on meat and ballistic gelatin and things like that, and I came down to a conclusion of, so jacketed ammo in dealing with flesh is not really the way to go. It's under the Geneva Convention, but that's for conventional warfare. That's not for police work. It's not for anything like that. So
Geneva suggestions.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Geneva suggestions.
Yeah.
You've all seen ballistic gel hits, right?
Oh yeah.
Right. Call it two different cavities. You got a primary cavity through it. That's where your projectile goes. Then you got the secondary wound cavity, which is all the damage that's done, basically bruising, right? Tearing of the flesh, the organs, the different pieces, that sort of thing. When that's done, and I relate this to animals because, want to keep it family friendly. When that round goes in and it starts to do its thing and it opens up, it's designed as, most hollow point ammunition opens up to a plus caliber size that you shot, transits through. So the hole starts small here and then gets bigger to the end. Yep. The idea is for it to stop on the inside of the rib so you don't lose meat on the other side, right? When you use something like some of these new rounds, the gilded metal stuff, all copper rounds, right?
Scott we've been using.
That stuff is going to zip through, but you don't create much of a secondary wound cavity. Mm-hmm. Part of the problem with officers engaging subjects is you want to create blood fluid movement within the body cavity. The quickest way to do that is to have a larger hole and then have that surrounding tissue bleed into it. Mm-hmm. Right? The faster you do that, the faster the blood pressure goes, the faster you're incapacitated. Mm-hmm. So once you're down, you can then be tended to quicker at that point, theoretically. I mean, Earl can speak to that much better than I can, but those are the science is simple, right? You want to make as big a hole as you can through the target and as much secondary damage as you can to create that wound. If you just go zip right through it.
Yeah, to put it simply, pointed rounds or jacket rounds or penetrators offer defeating body armor. If your intended targets are 2-legged or 4-legged animal, right? You need to use the right ammunition. But obviously, with modern warfare, we're thinking that the so-called bad guy is going to be wearing protection, right? A lot of these standards for penetrators, as Earl said, was based on the 1980s, like we're going to be fighting a war with the Russians. Well, it took a little while, but it's coming. But as far as stopping somebody immediately, a jacketed round at close quarters is going to zip through. One agency I was dealing with, they went back to using 55 grain jacket soft points because their engagements were in the 25 to 30 yards, and other than the person dropping, they couldn't tell that they'd actually hit someone. It just depends on whether you're actually trying to stop that person or wound that person, right? A wounded bad guy is still a problem, right? But I mean, again, a lot of the ammunition we use today is penetrators, right? But I guess it just depends on what you're doing. But a 5.56 round at 10 yards is going to go through most soft things without much internal damage. I mean, you could bleed to death eventually, but ammunition selection is important. But in the policing world, that is not done at the unit level, from my understanding, in any capacity.
Could be now.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because the officers now with carbine programs and things like that are quite often the first. TAC is all, doesn't matter where you are. TAC is anywhere from 20 minutes to 4 hours out, right?
Right.
So,
yeah. Yeah.
I have a couple of questions here. Where does level 3+ kind of work its way? Like, is it an actual standard? Is it a quasi standard? Because I keep hearing level 3+. What does it mean?
Well, it's interesting. It was never in the original NIJ 06 standard, although industry wide it's been accepted of level 3+, and so it covers things that normally wouldn't be covered by a level 3, but not to a level 4. So, for example, if plates that I was dealing with, the ProTech plate that I was dealing with, was technically a level 3+ because it was defeating 308, but it was never designed to defeat 308. And it was defeating 30-30 because it was never designed to do that. So many people say, oh, well, I've got a special threat plate. Yes, there is special threat testing, or there was special threat testing. But level 3+, as far as I recall, and maybe somebody here can correct me, although I've been around the industry for a few years, is not an NIJ standard.
No, it never has been. Basically, the correct term, as you said, is special threat. So what I hate about special threat is what I hate about in conjunction plates is that it's rated for 5.56 this, or it's rated for 308 that, or 7.6251 that. Okay, so if you're in the right situation at the right distance with the right particular round by the right company, technically you can get level 4 performance in some categories on a level 3+ plate. But there we go, right? So, well, this M855 does this, and this M855 does that, or C77 ball. So you're basically playing, armor Russian roulette by saying technically it can does this, whereas all of the other NIJ standards, actual issue standards, are they will do everything including this, and then this plate will do everything, or soft armor including this. There is definitive. So when you look at a dozen different companies' so-called level 3 plus plate, there'll be a plethora of things that they say that it fits, which is why NIJ allow the special threat and they list it. When 5.7 hit the mainstream, they were like, well, this plate will stop 5.7. This plate will stop 4.6 for the HK. This plate will, and this kind of stuff. So realistically, the 3 plus concept is kind of BS because there is no absolute standard. But I mean, realistically, does there need to be a standard that for M855 or any of those, what is it? The M193?
193 is normal.
Yeah, exactly. That's a really high velocity 55 grain round, like crazily fast.
You can ask NIJ to test your armor against a threat that you want and certify it against that threat. So it's just basically.
They will kind of do custom to a specific round.
That's correct. So it's not called it's not called NIJ 3 plus. It's called NIJ special threat.
Yeah, like the DEA have some weird requirements. Like they were one of the first ones to sort of adopt outside of a Navy type setting, plates that float. Buoyant, neutral. But they're also like various agencies around the world that are using relatively weird stuff, like the MP7 from HK. Going back to that concept of we want our plate to be at least as good as the weapon that we're using. So you get a level 3 plate that is made specifically to stop that round. Won't stop, 5.56 at 3,300 feet per second, but it will stop that. But again, that is a customer specific requirement. Any armor company or anybody is saying, oh, well, it's 3 plus, it stops 5.56. Well, that's a bit of a lie, right? Which is why there's no standard for it. Special threats,
level 3 will stop 5.56 ammo. It will not stop M855, or is not supposed to stop M855.
Right, but for the average consumer and some law enforcement that are in a quasi knowledge-ish base, they don't. Not all of them are like you. They would not understand the difference between if you start saying, "Oh, well, it stops 223 this and 77 grain OMT that, and 55 grain M193 whatever." Like they just say, "Oh, it stops 5.56," but that's a huge variation of projectiles, right? So that's sort of what I think a lot of companies play with is you say 5.56 protection, you think it's everything, and it's not.
Yeah, any serious hand loader or cartridge enthusiast can tell you that there's a lot of variance that can be had in bullet loading, cartridge performance. So
exactly. I had an interesting one just before I left Safari, and I had a client that came forward, and what they said was that they wanted us to go and test level 3 plates against steel shot. And I was like, so what size shot? And they were like, well, number 4 shot in steel. And I was like, that doesn't make any sense. It's not going to penetrate a plate.
Right.
No, we need it tested or we can't buy it. And I said, well, I don't want your business actually, because you're not making any sense. and they were shocked that I turned them away. And I said, I'm not actually going to fly to have anybody from our armor people go to Wichita and test against something that I can tell you right off the top of my head, it's going to defeat.
Yeah.
And
but by the way, it'll defeat that slingshot round too. So should we test that?
Yeah, I'm going to throw rocks at you, and maybe we should go to Wichita for that.
Well, how big of rocks are we talking about here?
Yeah. I might trebuchet in the backyard.
Are they round stream rocks, or are they pointy, kind of sharp rocks?
Yeah, and it was just, and I worked with that client for about a month until I finally said, guys, I'm sorry. And I actually told them, like, there's no logic in your thought process. I'm sorry. I can't help you. And they were actually appalled. And well, there was a complaint to my boss and things like that. But I said to them, I can only deal with stupid for so long. Like there's no logic in what you're asking.
Yeah.
You know, it makes no sense.
That's very interesting.
Sometimes the customer does not know what they want or need.
Well, I also asked them, and this is one of the things that I ask every law enforcement agency that I run into. Let's look at, you know, so have you had an officer get shot with that particular round? No, we haven't. Okay. So what are, especially in law enforcement, I'll say, so what are the firearms that you're seizing or coming across in the field on a regular basis? And of course, and it varies, right? So for example, RCMP, Northern Alberta, it's going to be 303, 30, 30, 30-06, 6.5 Creedmoor.
7.62 by 39.
SKSs, right?
Yeah.
So, that's what they're seizing. And then if I go, let's say, to Calgary, Edmonton, Toronto, Vancouver, what are you seizing? 9 mil, 45, 40 cal, 22. And I'm like, okay, so you're in a totally different armor category than, interestingly here with OPP, when I talk to them, what are you running into? And they're like, we run into everything. Okay. Toronto police, 9 mil, 45, 40. And it's like, okay, so, again, how do you set that up though, force wide? If you've got, like a large organization like the RCMP, they've got urban and rural. So what do you do for everyone? Well, you give everyone the ability to have plates. And like many of our listeners here, I actually believe two things. Number one, when you go to the range, it's probably, depending on who's there, it's a good idea to wear soft armor and plates, depending on what you're doing. I don't when I go to the range. I trust the people I shoot with, but I've been at ranges where I went, man, I should have packed my armor today.
Yep.
And when I teach, so when I instruct, I generally wear armor. Why? Well, because of occupational health and safety. If I do get injured, I want to be able to say to workplace insurance, no, I got injured, but I had armor on.
Yeah.
So I had worn all of the safety precautions that I should have. It's like wearing work boots, right? Why do you wear work boots? Same thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
I've been on some hunting trips where I would be wearing armor if I could.
I got shot at once while paddling on a kayak. I really want to go back to my track and grab my 870, but I thought probably going to get arrested. Just kind of showing what it was like to have incoming.
Anybody that's ever hunted public lands feels exactly the same way you do.
Yeah, absolutely.
We had a federal CO call a ceasefire during a hunt.
What?
Yeah, we were hunting on a base, and there was kind of a loop, and everyone kind of encircled the elk herd and just kind of opened up on them. And then you see the federal CO ripping by with lights on, and they had to call a ceasefire because we had rounds were zipping over our head. It was not a nice time.
Whoa.
For those of you that don't know, there's a CFB base in southern Alberta called Suffield. It's a very large base. And they work with the British military, and they allow a defined hunting season, a number of weekends, which you can access the problematic elk herd on base and in the area. For those of you that are not aware,
so nothing.
I will say that it has gotten significantly better on Suffield. Like as the hunt goes on, it's gotten better because there's some hunters out there that should not be out there. I will say that flat out.
Yeah.
We got to watch several of them. It was interesting.
Mike, you had a couple of really good questions on your list. We'll let you get to those.
I got another one here. So elephant in the room, it's for the civilians, because we've talked about the military and the LE side. Yep. Body armor for civilians in Canada. What's that whole scenario look like?
In regards to legality?
Legality. Yeah, let's start with that.
Well, most places in Ontario, most places in Canada, body armor is legal. There are certain places where you require a license or a legitimate reason for that. There are some provinces that say you need a legitimate reason. And the list is so long. If you can't find a reason on that list, you probably shouldn't be buying body armor. I had a doctor, he was an abortion clinic doctor. So, of course, he was everybody's favorite person in this particular town. And he went to the police and like, dude, you should probably get an alarm system, a dog, and buy some body armor. So he did. All right. But in that particular province, he required a reason for that. Ontario, for some reason, because, Ontario has a law for everything, there is no requirement for the individual to have that. And for us, it kind of bothers us in a way because there's no background check on that, no protocol, no standard to meet. So we basically have what we call a good guy verification process, which is just simply put that if Simon thinks that it's not a good idea to sell you armor, we're not. And we do require someone's name, address, license, contact information, or whatever. So we feel that we're doing our due diligence. In years past, I have literally said, not today, bro, not happening. And generally, the not so nice people get that. There is a few people out there that are super sort of ultra survivalist, like the phones are listening to us kind of guys. If they really show signs of mental health related issues, it's still a no. But out west, there's a few provinces that are very specific, Alberta, BC, when it comes to that. And I believe, is it Nova Scotia or New Brunswick, where it's an absolute no? Can't remember.
I think it's Nova Scotia. Earl?
I think it's Nova Scotia.
Yeah, I believe it's Nova Scotia.
Yeah. So we have a few friends that were posted to Nova Scotia, and they've done some work for us on and off. And they're like, dude, I'd love to get plates. I'm like, man, unless you get a business license to get involved, you don't want to have these. Well, I might get posted to Edmonton. I'm like, man, the last thing you want is to get arrested by the RCs for owning a piece of fabric, right? And then you got to explain that to work if you don't get shot, right, for some reason, or raided, or somebody knocks on your ex-girlfriend, whatever the deal. I said it's just a thing, right? It's definitely indifferent across the province. The only thing that I've noticed when I've seen police reports that if somebody is using body armor in commission of an indictable offense, it holds a little bit of weight in certain provinces. I don't know if Earl would want to say something to that, but I know Quebec takes it quite seriously if body armor is used in relation to an indictable offense. Kind of like a hammer could be a breaking and entering tool, depending on how you word it.
Or like concerned it's premeditation, right? You knew you were going to get into something.
Right.
Yeah.
Speaking as a former detective, though, it actually is one of those things the Crown deals away. So it's not, and it's funny. One of the things, like speaking as former law enforcement, I find the whole thing about body armor ridiculous in that, it's almost like every time we seized guns, they were illegally in the country. They weren't,
right.
They hadn't been purchased here. Same as body armor hadn't been purchased here.
Yeah.
So that's kind of one of the things that I see. And really, it's kind of like one of those things of, so let's take away cars from everybody because we stopped an impaired driver on Saturday night. Like
exactly.
It makes sense to me. And that's one of the things that I just see. Like, you can create all the laws in the world, but really there's a basic set of laws and the people that are violating them, you could hook them up on that if you actually had
it's a list of the crimes that it could commit. I mean, I would say, and again, never been a police officer, but if I was to put various things that might be as evidence, somebody owning body armor, it's a defensive item. I mean, it's not a 30-round magazine. It's not a stun grenade. It's not, you know what I mean? Like worst case scenario,
it's not an IED
material that stops bullets. I once threw it at one of the TAC team guys that I was dealing with through another company before I started all this stuff. I'm like, what do you think about bad guys wearing armor? He's like, well, I'm the designated marksman. If I have to take someone's life, I am going to do whatever I need. And I said, well, what does that mean? I'll put it politely. If I have to shoot him in the head to take him out immediately, then I will. But I said, well, that's not always possible. He says, yeah, I know that, basically talking down to me. I said, so what happens if you shoot in the chest and they don't drop? He says, then you shoot them again, right? We train for that, right? But rarely, he says, in the time that I've been here, have I ever engaged a subject that was wearing body armor, right? It says it's in the sub-percentiles, and I've been doing this for 30 years. So again, I'm not going to mention too much more because it might be obvious who I'm talking about. But these are guys that are on the sharp end that have actually had to engage bad guys on a semi-regular basis. And to them, the armor is not really a thing. I don't know what it's like for your average beat cop, maybe dealing with people in certain, urban cities where they might be wearing body armor. Because it's kind of really embarrassing that if you engage a subject with a firearm and they don't drop, that's it's kind of surprising.
But the other side of this too, though, is that a lot of the armor that these folks are getting is not easily concealed.
No.
And really, if it is concealable armor that you can wear under a shirt, it's pretty easy to see it. I was on a project with Safariland where we were looking at and actually have developed a highly concealable armor system that you can't really tell that a person is wearing it. But up until that came around, I'll tell you what, I could tell you from a mile away if someone was wearing armor or not.
Yeah, the second they move their arm or they try to twist, you get that signature across the back or across the front as it peeks in. And as funny as it sounds in 2024, a lot of bad guys think that wearing armor is uncool, which is hysterical. And we thank them for that.
Good. Let him keep thinking that way.
I don't see anything wrong with civilians owning it. I mean, again, it's another safety thing. It's like
personal
it's the same argument of can civilians own firearms? Absolutely, and they should.
Yep.
It seems to me like the whole argument is people A, watch too much television, and B, they're all afraid of the North Hollywood incident happening again. But it also seems to me, and Earl, you'll be able to speak to this much better than I can, but it really has always seemed to me that if the North Hollywood shooting had happened today, it wouldn't have been a thing. It was only a thing because all they had were 9mm handguns and shotguns. Nowadays, most patrol cars have an AR, and which would have made the North Hollywood shooting not a fraction of what it was.
I agree, and I think looking at even the armor that they had was mostly soft armor. It wasn't hard armor, right. And you're right. It was stopping 9mm rounds, and it was stopping buckshot and that type of thing. Because in those days, I was a police officer in those days. In those days, shooting people with slugs was there was no such thing as you didn't take slugs. Like the only time that we had slugs was for animal control. So shooting moose or deer on the side of the highway. Don't ever load a slug to shoot a person with them. Okay. We did have rifles, but half the time they lived in the vault at detachment. You never took them out. And this is one of the things in North Hollywood, they didn't have that. And I'll tell you what, a couple of well-placed rounds in that whole thing would have ended the whole thing.
Yeah.
And when you did see it end, it was from successive shots from MP5s and things like that.
Right.
Where one of the guys went full auto on the guy and stitched him center of mass with probably 12 or 15 rounds. Yeah, that's going to defeat your soft armor pretty quick.
Oh, yeah.
So that's one of the things. But what's funny is that we're not really seeing that happen with even now that the prevalence of armor in the market and in Canada. I don't think you're seeing that in your average, your average murder or your average crime, where armor is a thing. Maybe you've got gangbangers running around Vancouver in armor. I highly doubt it because
there is a few. I know a few Vancouver guys, and they have the Up Armor, Fortified Buildings Act, basically saying that you basically can't do that. But realistically, those people that are likely to do that on a regular basis, they're not following the laws anyway. So you can create a law that says that you can't hold your breath for more than 10 seconds. It's not going to make any difference to the people inside the law.
Yeah.
I think the public misconception is that if little Johnny has his body armor and his, B&T, that he's going to become like an urban terrorist or some kind of thing. The reality is, this is Canada, man. I mean, I've been to most places in the world and seen some pretty extreme things. It's not going to happen on a regular basis in Canada. If we do end up with somewhat civilians doing really bad things here, it's going to be a terrorism or urban terrorism related thing. That's not little Johnny going off, losing his mind with his Mini 14 and his body armor. I mean, I don't think there's even a statistic in history in Canada that you could quantify that says that civilians owning body armor and rifles.
It's
I mean, a lot of
legislation.
Right. It's so small that you just couldn't create a statistic for it. But I mean, you got to look at the people that are unhappy with people owning body armor as civilians. They're also the kind of people that think that, you should only own bolt action rifles and pump action shotguns, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, they're completely out of touch with what's actually going on. And your average firearms owner does not commit crimes. We just don't, right? It's just not a thing. It's, the largest crime that regular firearms owners do in Canada is suicide, right? And that's a true statistic. We just don't do things like that. It's just not a very Canadian thing to do. So people owning body armor as civilians, I think, is quite literally what it should be, which is you're doing something dynamic. When it comes to firearms, you should have the proper equipment, right? If you're going to go four-wheeling in a mud bog, you should have big tires and four-wheel drive and buy a Toyota, right? If you really want to suck, buy a Jeep. Right?
Wow.
If you want to just look cool,
thank you, Toyota Canada.
Shots fired. In terms of I know it seems that the attitude of certain sport shooters in certain shooting sports, such as like multi-gun, IPSC has kind of changed in the recent years. Can you kind of attribute to that to anything? Is it just a more general knowledge?
What do you mean?
Essentially, why do you think it's become more popular for those participating in the shooting sports to actively wear body armor during competition?
Well, why wouldn't you? I mean, when you're dynamic, when you're moving around, so you've got 40 guys, 100 guys at an event, and you're just wearing your armor. Somebody has an ND somewhere, right? Where'd that round go? Well, if you're wearing armor, you stand a chance of surviving that hit. Right, it's personal protective equipment, as far as I'm concerned.
I remember, and I'm sure somebody from IPSC is going to call me tomorrow. I remember actually being booted from the range at Kingston, Ontario, for wearing camouflage pants and a pair of combat boots because I didn't have any money at the time. I was making minimum wage, and that was the only pair of kit that I had that wasn't work related. Like, you can't wear military gear at an IPSC competition; it looks too militant. And I'm like, I got a pair of camouflage shorts from Eddie Bauer and a pair of old black combat boots, which I bought from the local army surplus place in Kingston. And I'm like, are you serious? They're like, we're absolutely serious. And I'm like, okay. But that was 12, 13 years ago.
Yeah.
It's always an uphill fight with the old guard, right?
Right.
This is true.
Right. As you start progressing in any sport, there's somebody else that's been there doing it longer than you have. That's verboten, right?
That said, I was young and dumb at the time. Actually, it's probably more long ago than that. I think it was 2006, 2008 when I first started shooting IPSC. Now, having got a little older and got more into politics and how things work, I think they were probably trying to make sure that they kept it as a sport, right? By not trying to militarize it. Obviously, people at IPSC Ontario don't understand where IPSC came from, or who Colonel Cooper was, or what PPC was, or what IDPA came as a sort of a second rendition from that. But I was just young and just want to do stuff. I was kind of surprised that it would do that. I don't know if it's that ridiculous today. But back to what you were saying about the multi-gun and three-gun nation and all that kind of stuff. I mean, it's definitely got more of that tactical appeal to it. I just think, it's a little bit of Call of Duty there, a little bit of like doing something badass, running around with your nods on, shooting targets and jumping over shit. I mean,
a little bit of LARPing. We can say it.
If you think about it, IPSC is LARPing too, because pardon my language, fuck, I would do stuff in IPSC that I would do in a street fight with a pistol. You'd be dead pretty quick. I will reverse that a little bit by saying that some of the fastest movements that I've learned with a pistol have been combining my tactical knowledge and the stuff that I learned through taking courses with IPSC. One of the things with IPSC that you'll learn is the ability to acquire multiple targets extremely fast, right, and make sure that the shots are on target. So I took that and applied it to my version of the real world, and I thought that's a good knowledge base. But I don't know why people try to play us versus them, IPSC versus tactical shooting, or, you know, it's like, I know people that are bow hunters that think that people shouldn't use firearms for hunting deer.
It's human nature.
What's
why do we wear camouflage hunting?
Well, let me throw this at you though. In multi-gun too, the other thing that's happened is that, you know, multi-gun is you're shooting various platforms. So you're shooting shotgun, rifle, handgun. And really the armor carrier has become a load-bearing carrier.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And in many cases, guys are, I will say this, many of the people that I've met through multi-gun were interested in self-protection and things like that. In many cases, there was LARPing too, but there was a lot of stuff about self-protection. And I've really seen that a lot with the courses that I teach now, is many people come to me where 5 years ago, it was all about, I want to shoot better competitively. Now I want to shoot better for self-protection because the cops aren't going to show up.
Yep.
And I'd be like, okay, well, let me teach you. I mean, I've been shooting IPSC for 30 years. I've been on the Ontario standard and production team 12 times for the nationals. And so, you know, and the funny thing is that people would go, oh yeah, you're a big IPSC shooter. Yeah, I am. But you tack up when you teach a course. Well, yeah, I do, because it's got all my load-bearing kit on it. And back to what I said, you know, health and safety type stuff. I wear my armor for that particular reason. I started out before multi-gun was a big deal. When it was 3-gun, you never wore armor. Why? It was heavy.
Yeah.
And it slowed you down. But you wore load-bearing things, so chest rigs or belt rigs and that type of stuff.
Big loaders, whatnot. Yeah. You're talking like 3-gun nation type concept, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was shooting, you know, and having a ball at it. But I look at it now and I go, the multi-gun stuff, yeah, there's a lot to that. It's kind of a, for the people that go to it, it's a lifestyle. I mean, and it's all spawned from what we're seeing in Canada, has all come from what was going on in Finland with those guys.
Yeah.
Right.
And honestly, I've been invited to, you know, to the brutality matches out in BC. The only reason I haven't gone is because I'm an old guy now. And frankly, you know, number one, I don't want to sleep in a tent at night. No. Number two, I get tired after about 6 hours of wearing armor and all my where I'm like, I just want to go have a nap and a couple of beers, you know? And really, but that's an age thing. Like if I was still in my 20s, 30s, 40s, I'd be like, yeah, I'm in.
Yeah, count me in. Yeah.
Myself. But
yeah, you kind of want to do the Bear Grylls thing, stay at the Hilton until 6 o'clock in the morning, and then go out in the field, do the stuff, and look cool, right?
Well, I'm not going to squeeze water out of elephant shit, but yeah, I definitely will go out and you know, do my thing. But I think there's a lot of validity to multi-gun, and I really believe this is that you should be multifaceted like that, because it helps you in so many different scenarios, whether it's a hunting scenario, a survival scenario where you get, you know, maybe your truck breaks down and you're 100K from town and you've got to hunt for food, you know, a societal breakdown type thing, all that kind of stuff. I believe there's a lot of validity to wearing your kit and doing those types of things. The funny thing that I also see, though, is that, you know, if you're going to take that into a societal breakdown thing, be the gray man and don't be the guy who's
Absolutely. It's kind of like being in a confrontation in a bar, right? You bump into some dude, you knock his beer everywhere, it gets in your face. It's like, hey, you spilt my beer, whatever. You're like, hey, bud, hey, sorry about that, man. Let me buy you another beer. And then if he gets in your face and wants to fight, then you take him out, right? But you don't immediately get aggressive with someone. Yeah. In a survivor situation, the least exposure you have, the longer you're going to last. And it's like being prepared. You know, if you don't have to go out and raid the local grocery store for milk, right? You just go to the basement and get some powdered milk. That's much better in a survival situation. I think a big allure to the 3-gun, you know, brutality type concept is learning a skill set that exceeds more than just firearms. Put yourself in scenarios where it could be difficult, right?
Yeah.
I think that's a lure to, if you look at the age demographic of the people doing it, a lot of them are ex-military too, right? They're kind of like, you know, I want to beef up my skill set. But we sponsored the last couple of events, and they're trying to bring one to Ontario. We've been looking at sponsoring that, but I said, man, it's going to be a hard push to get that pushed in Ontario without the CFO basically shutting you down. I said, I'd love to see it here, but realistically, you're probably going to end up keeping it out west.
Yeah, you guys in your Ontario CFO is
Yeah.
let's just say, not a shining star of CFOs in
We
this
call it Ontario.
nation.
Well, our new CFO is just like, he was putting a thing out to clubs a few months ago about make sure that if you have someone coming and teaching in your club that you've checked for insurance. Like, I sat back and I don't recall that anywhere in the regulations. I don't recall that anywhere in the Firearms Act. So why are you putting this out there? But the threat is always, we'll pull your club certification if you don't do this, because they make stuff up.
It might be sound business advice, but it's outside of their purview.
But I mean, of course, you're going to have insurance, but like, there's no requirement for that. So who came up with this idea? Is this your opinion, or is this a CFO's office opinion?
Exactly. And this is the thing that happens here in Ontario. And I mean, at one time I worked for one of the CFOs before he was CFO, and he was a great guy. He became a CFO and he became a tyrant. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. But I'll tell you this, I mean, having trained across this country, I've had, I wouldn't say difficulties or run-ins, but I've had to have conversations with CFOs about what we were doing. I had Saskatchewan CFO, the old CFO in Saskatchewan. I was going out there to teach a course, and he called me and said, I'm not going to allow this to happen until you send me your lesson plans and your client list. I said, well, that won't be happening because that's not within your purview.
Right.
And what's your concern? And he says, well, rounds are going to be, you're teaching a carbine course, rounds are going to be leaving the range. Where are you getting that from? Right. And what I had found out was the particular range that we were on it was being used by the RCMP a lot, and they were launching rounds out of the range on magazine changes.
Oh dear.
And but that's your fault, right? I'm not the RCMP, and let me tell you what's wrong with the lesson plan. And after I talked to him for about half an hour, he went, you know what, Earl? I can't wait to have you come out here. It's going to be a great time. Knock yourself out. And I was like, what the hell? So,
can you train the RCs how to do mag changes while you're out?
Yeah. Can you do a mag change course?
You can't move. Mm-hmm. Magazine changes have to be, the gun has to be pointed straight into the berm. I'm like, okay, sure, whatever there, pal.
Save that for Quebec, eh?
You know, it was just bizarre stuff. But I look at it and I go, so who ruined it for everyone out there? Oh, the police did. The most unsafe people on your range were the police, and you want me to work at a level that is overly cautious because of something the police did. That doesn't make any sense, you know. But
sounds legit.
You know, they sometimes get into. But I will say this: I mean, a few years ago, I was coming out to Alberta, reached out, told the CFO I was coming out. I get a call the next day from Ontario CFO. Mind you, my ex works at the CFO, but they called me and they said, the range you're going to, you might not want to go there. And I was like, oh, why is that? It's not certified. I'm like, oh, shit. Okay. And I'm thinking, well, if the range isn't certified, then my insurance doesn't count. So I called back to Alberta CFO and said, so what's the deal with this range? And they actually helped me find a range that we could go to run a 3-day course. And I went, holy crap, you're doing that for me? Mm-hmm. And this is before the current regime in Alberta.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you what,
but that seems like what they should be doing.
It's almost like they're a public servant.
Not the other way.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. And
some of people helping people in oh my God.
Well, to Mike's point, they're a public servant. And this is one of the things that many of these people forget, you know, and I'll be honest with you. I remember, you know, I was when I was a cop, it was funny because I didn't spend a lot of time in uniform, and I was in between roles I was in. I got sent back to the road for probably about 6 months. And I can remember one night I was sitting in the car and somebody walked over. Excuse me, sir, can I ask, you know, can you give me some directions? I went, get lost. This doesn't say tourist, you know, kiosk on the side of the car. Get out of here. And then I realized this person walked away. I go, what a dick. Yeah. Am I ever a dick? Like, why would you? So I got out of the car and I go, sorry about that. I said, I'm having a rough night. I really apologize. And the guy was like, yeah, you were a real jerk, man. I said, I apologize, man. Like, that's not serving the public. And by the time I was done, the guy was like, yeah, I hope you have a better night, man. And I got him lined up to where he wanted to go and all that kind of stuff. But it's one of those things where public servants tend to forget. Mm-hmm. They're public servants. You know, and that's really what they do. And if someone's not doing something wrong, there's no point in giving the guy a hard time.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You know, and that's one of the things that I see. And so, you know, with me moving on, you know, into even my, you know, even what I do now, like this type of thing right now, you know, I'm semi-retired, but you know, this is one of the things now is putting back into the community, the shooting community, the armor business community, and that type of thing with the knowledge that I have going, yeah, I can help you out. You know, and ask me a question and I've got an answer, or I'll find one for you if I don't have one right now. Because I think that's important, because we all have questions about, you know, especially we're all like-minded individuals. Like, you know, I've got all kinds of questions about precision rifle and stuff like that, because that was never my bag. But, you know, it's one of those things where it's a passion of mine too, to learn more.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
and this community is great that way.
So, we'll kind of throw this out there, because it's one of the things that we as an armor company, because that we've been fighting against, right? Which is, we've sort of touched a lot today, but in the sort of semi-rural areas, we understand through experience and through just pure statistics that police officers are more likely to be engaged with a large caliber hunting rifle than anything else. And we, on the armor side, have had a pushback from various suppliers, agencies, and government head sheds that, oh no, we want lightweight plates, or we want level 3 plus plates, or rifle 2, whatever the thing is. And we have all sort of have the understanding, I'm going to speak for you a little bit here, but we've had this conversation, and Sean has had the same conversation with his guys, is that if you're going to have be in a situation where you're going up against large caliber rifles, then the answer is level 4 plate or something of that style, right? We talked a lot today about M855 and armor piercing rounds and this and that and the other. Even if your lighter weight level 3 or level 3 plus plate stops said hunting round, our studies have stated that the backface deformation, the backface signature of the human body can be so dramatic that that can be as fatal as the projectile,
actual penetration,
right?
Yeah.
Everybody in the armor knowledge space is always about, oh, it stopped the bullet, stop the bullet. What I've seen from NIJ and a lot of people in the last several years, Afghanistan and various other things, policing, is that backface deformation, backface signature, and the understanding of what that does to the human body has become more of a factor than just plate stops bullet, right? Because internal injuries and, you know, hemorrhaging, bleeding has become a big thing. In the early campaign of Afghanistan, guys were, you know, 80, 90 meters away from an IED, and then be like, oh, good shit, I got all my legs and arms and fingers, and then 2 hours later, they pass out and they're bleeding internally from the pure impact of that explosion. The backface signature from a projectile hitting the plate has similar correlation as far as impact to tissue and internal organs. So we've really been pushing hard that agencies that are going to be in an area where they're likely to be shot at with large caliber rifles should really bypass the concept of a level 3 or lightweight plate and go straight to level 4. But we've been getting some resistance on that. So just from your experience, like, do you agree with us in general that level 4 plates should be the product they're looking for?
Hold on a second. We'll ask the fucking questions around here if you don't mind.
No, it's just like, you know, I'm preloading the question so we can get the right answer. Okay?
This was going. Oh, I was so interested in that.
Yeah. No. Okay. Go ahead. Answer the question. It's fine. We'll allow you one question.
I was going to let you guys fight it out amongst yourselves, Chris. All right.
It's a big point for us, right? You know, like I'm not a police officer, right? You know, I have been in the military, I've been shot, stuff like that. That was a long time ago. But I just get really frustrated when I think that I know the statistics are the large caliber rifles are being used in rural area, and a lot of agencies are speccing lightweight plates. And I think it's going to be a liability point when it comes to officers.
Maybe expand on what you were going after earlier about tailoring the plate to the environment and your potential threat.
Yeah.
Well, but this is the thing. So police services should be based on statistical and empirical information. And so you've got to sell that back to them and say, so let me get this straight, in urban environments, what are your, much like I said earlier, in urban environments, what are your officers seizing? In rural environments, what are your officers seizing? Okay, now let's do a breakdown. So how many officers do you have servicing small town and urban environments, whether it's the RCMP, OPP, you name it, the sheriff's departments, those types of things. And when they say, well, we've got 75% of our officers that are doing rural environments. Okay, so from those rural environments, you're able to statistically pull out firearms used in offenses, correct? Which is actually quite easy to do because CFO supposedly has those statistics. And again, you just put it back to that and say, so if the officer is more likely to run up against a hunting caliber rifle of, 7.62 by 39 or greater, like 308, 30, 30-06, then it makes sense that you would buy that particular piece of protective gear. You could even take that a step further and say across the country, what firearms are being seized more often than not. Now, I got news for you. It ain't Glocks. It's not handguns. Most likely, based on domestic violence or, robberies, threatening, that type of thing, the majority of firearms being seized are hunting rifles. And so you kick that back to them. You say, so if you're seizing and you're going up against hunting rifles constantly, why are you buying something that doesn't defeat that? And turn it around to an occupational health and safety issue and say, so you're saying that your officers have to have the lightest, easiest to don type of equipment, the easiest to carry. Yes, we are. That doesn't defeat the threat that they're going up against. That doesn't make any sense. So the carriage should fly in the face of the protective level. Carriage, a plate carrier is a plate carrier. It doesn't matter, what's in it. It matters how it fits. But on the other side of it is to sell it back to them and say, so the majority of firearms that you're seizing are hunting firearms, correct? Yes. So why aren't you protecting against that? And it's funny because that it's one of those things that doesn't seem to factor in. Like the listeners here, I'll bet you right now that the majority of the listeners that have been involved with this tonight, when we sit back and we go, so what plate would you buy? If we threw that out there as a poll right now, the majority would come back and go 308, 30-06, 303. Oh yeah, and I want to defeat my own 5.56 rifle, whether it's an MCR, XCR, whatever it is. XCR is prohibited now, but anyway, they're going to look at that type of thing. Or if I said to somebody, you're going in a hunting situation, you might get shot. Well, actually, you're going in a hunting situation on Crown land. What armor do you want?
Right.
Because Crown land's the worst.
Yes.
And they're going to go, I want a level 4 plate based on what I knew before I tuned in and what I know now. I want a level 4. So why wouldn't the police want that? Because that's the most prevalent threat.
So we're on a precipice right now, in my opinion, because the Police Act here in Ontario has changed so dramatically that this type of armor is now being called for in an up armoring thing for the active shooter side of things.
Yes and no. It's not specified in the Act. And I tried before the Act was done to get them to specify a level 4 armor.
But
plates for sure,
plates
right?
for sure are coming right now.
Right.
And then the choice, of course, is in my opinion, should be level 4. What I'm trying to, I guess, badly explain here is we're stuck in a moment where this will frame the next 5 years, maybe even 7-10 years worth of armor cycle through the system before they realize that, for lack of a better description, they're negligent on what they're handing their officers. If you're high speed, low drag, and you're wearing that special threat, 3 special threat, level 3 or rifle 2, whatever it is that you're going to be at, I get it. You're trained differently. You're, like Simon said, you're 1% percentile of everybody out there that's running and gunning. But if
I don't buy that argument either. I mean, if I was running and gunning, and I was running level 4 plates.
Yeah, what I'm kind of driving at is when you've got all of the officers. I mean, if you're on active shooter situation. I mean, you look at some of the stats, active shooters generally, unless they barricade themselves, don't really last long. Right.
Well,
So
12 to 18 minutes on an active shooter.
Yeah. So yes, our plates are heavy, right? But if the average officer has to drop this on for 4 hours, right? They're not wearing it day to day. Now, I get the health and safety concern. They're already carrying things, the belt itself, the extra weight, the positioning that you suffer from inside of the cruiser. I understand all of that, and I feel for them. But this plate here is for the worst 10 to 20 minutes of your life.
Yeah.
Right.
But are RCMP detachments not taking into consideration historical events like the Mayerthorpe shooting?
You would think.
Yes and no.
Tabor.
Yeah.
But here's the thing: is they are and they're not. And the RCMP is a different entity, and they are coming out with their armor program right now, which is being worked on presently, is going to take into account hard armor plates, and I think you're going to see a level 4 plate there.
I hope so, because it seems that what we've done this last year and a half with all the shows and all the meetings and all the show and tells that we've done with agencies, they're really pushing towards that 3+ or rifle 2. And like in my core, like I truly believe that they're wrong. Right.
I think what you're going to see with the RCMP is they come out with their own specification.
Right.
Absolutely.
And honestly, the specification is going to be as much as they say this is our specification. It doesn't need to be, and they will say it doesn't need to be NIJ because their current soft armor is not NIJ certified.
Yes. Yeah, I read that.
And so, how do I know that? My company supplied it.
Right.
So there's the other thing. It's not NIJ certified. Mind you, it meets and exceeds NIJ certification. The other side of it, though, the hard armor plate I think they're going to go to is the same thing. It'll be a proprietary plate. It's much like CanSoftCom. CanSoftCom, they don't give a shit about NIJ.
No, they just want a specific thing for a specific stuff, right? But I just think somebody on the size of the RCMP, they'll just absorb all the liability in relation to, potential death due to
as an officer,
failure.
That's got to be comforting,
right?
Well, I'll tell you what, I'll give them this. I think, I think what you're going to see is the equipment is going to be good. I mean, a lot has changed with the RCMP from the past till now, and I think there's an opportunity right now to catch up to, well, at least to next week anyway. Because that's the way they operate. They're always kind of behind the 8 ball. Same as the OPP. The OPP right now, their armor program, the armor that's in the cruisers is 12 years. Well, no, it's 14 years old now. It's a level 4, and it's a rectangular plate, and it's in a carrier that goes over top of a soft body armor carrier that's got all kinds of pouches and stuff on it. So it's got standoff. The problem that we're running into right now is trying to sell to people who think they know better as to, number one, how armor works, how it should be worn, and then lastly is what's the threat protection level. One of the other things is when they come back to you and they say, oh, well, they're not going to wear a 4-pound plate in the front and a 4-pound plate in the back because it's uncomfortable in the cruiser. Well, hold on a second. So they're responding to an active shooter at a cruiser, at a school, right? Yeah. Why are they sitting in the cruiser? Oh, yeah, good point.
Right.
It's the same thing as what I was running into recently was, well, they can't take their armor carrier off to slide the front and rear plate in. And I'm like, well, why can't they? Well, what if the shooter sees them? Well, why would you stop right in front of the venue when you're going to do the shooting? Or when the shooting's going place when you're trained?
Poor situational awareness.
That's a training
problem. They're actually trained. When they go to a bank robbery, you don't stop in front of the bank. So why are you stopping in front of the school when you go to the school shooting? And it's one of these things where there's a lack of logic because there's a lack of, well, first of all, egos get involved. Second of all, there's, when you look at police shootings and people have been in police shootings, like Will Petty from Centrifuge has an excellent, comment on this is your average police officer that maybe as a trainer or whatever who's been involved in a shooting has a knowledge dump of 1. What the hell does he or she know? That was one incident. And so that's one of the things that we need to look at. And so when you try to sell this back to them and say, so where, sometimes you got to challenge them and say, so where are you getting that thought process from of, well, they can't wear it in a cruiser because it's too heavy, or they can't wear it for 12 hours. Who the hell is going to wear a hard armor plate for 12 hours? And explain when the last time that happened was.
I mean, even attack teams, if they're in hold and secure, they'll peel off after a period if there's another team available, right?
Well, again, a lot of times, depending on what your position is, if you're on containment, you may not have plates on at all. You may just have your soft armor and your carbine.
Yeah.
And load bearing kit if you've got it. So that's one of the things that we need to look at. If you're an entry team, yeah, you're going to have probably, a soft armor, hard armor, and your load bearing equipment, etc. Now, there's another thing that we didn't talk about though is, do magazines and ammunition provide ballistic protection? Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
So does it take a level 3 plate and turn it into a level 4? I don't think so, but it might.
Anything in the way is going to slow something down, right?
Well, I think, yeah, but again, I look at it as, so why not buy once, cry once, and buy level 4? Because it's a little bit heavier. But, and also, we talk about a shelf life on armor. So this is one of the things that people don't realize. Under NIJ, normally your shelf life on hard and soft armor is 5 years.
Yeah.
But you can go to NIJ and say, no, we actually want a 10-year certification on this, and they will allow it.
Yeah, which I thought was kind of weird, right? I mean, we all know where the 5-year limit came from. I always thought that weird. And I'm like, well, 10 years of actual use on armor, that's really pushing limits when it comes to technology.
If armor is stored correctly,
absolutely,
you can store it indefinitely. Now the problem is in Canada, of course, you put it in the trunk of the cruiser. So what do we got? Wintertime, we got minus 35, 40. Right. Summertime, we got plus 40. And really, it could be in the same town. So is that going to delaminate our armor? Yeah, it probably is all the time. So the other thing then is that we need an armor replacement program. The biggest problem right now is budgetary, and the other side of it is we're seeing, Edmonton went through this of defund the police. So we're not going to buy the best pieces of equipment for the police because we hate them. Interestingly, well, it's interesting because our current government wants our current police service to run around confiscating firearms if they hate the police.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that's okay. One of the leaders of one of our 3 major political parties thinks that we shouldn't even have a standing military. So, I mean, it's kind of giving you the idea of some of the thoughts coming out of there. But, I hate to break this up because I find this super interesting, but we're at the 2.5 hour mark. I know it's super late for you guys. I want to be respectful of everybody's time. We had one last question that maybe, I know Simon's taking a bit of a break there. Sean, maybe you can answer this in, 60 seconds or less. Does Aratech have any plans on ballistic helmets in the future? Or do you make them now?
We don't right now.
Yeah, there it is. That was a good answer. No, I'm just
simple piece to it all is absolutely yes, but there's a large investment there. Most likely you will see an Aratech line of soft armor first, and then expanding on things as well in the soft armor side. Probably getting into some up armoring of vehicles, right, and inserts for that sort of thing. And then we're working on something for our law enforcement partners out there, which is kind of what we call a lend-lease. What we're looking at doing is basically creating a way for the forces to be able to afford to do this without having to pay up that one lump sum all up front. Mm-hmm. It's a 5-year program. Why not take it over 5 years? So we're working on something like that.
Nice.
And we're really looking forward to being able to give that to somebody as well. So
that's pretty cool.
Any force out there, right?
Well, guys, this is one of the shows that we could probably go for 4 hours or more. But to be perfectly honest with you, if we had known that the conversation was going to be this good, we probably should have started this show at 4:30 this afternoon. But why don't we do this real quick? Why don't you guys really quickly plug Aratech and where we can find you and et cetera, et cetera. Hopefully Earl will be back by then and Earl can plug himself real quick. And then we'll call this a night, and we're going to have to bring you guys on again. Cause like there's so much.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. But go ahead and plug yourselves.
So very easily, the plug is simple. We are Canada's only level 4 rated and listed and certified plate on the market. We loathe that people out there are trying to skirt the system and provide personal protective equipment that is substandard and not tested properly. At least there's a standard and a protocol here, right? At the very least. You can find us at aratechresearch.com. Current deal on right now is a complete set of level 4s, smalls or mediums available here. Mediums are on a bit of a back order, but there are available smalls. They're all $799.99 at the moment, down from $1,200 at Aratech.
Okay.
So we're happy to work with anybody out there and to anybody in the law enforcement, whether I make this appeal to the head shed or whether I make this appeal to the rank and file and to the associations out there. There's two basic components to any recovery from a shooting, right? One is the physical. Did you get shot? Right? What's that? Did you just break a rib? Did you get shot through and through? Is it serious? How long is that recovery? And then there's the mental component. I would doubt you would even register a pistol round hitting this to start with, right? If I can take that physical component away and minimize it, your return to work is a lot less complicated, right? So for the head sheds out there, that's a bonus for you, right? For the officer, I'm very happy to say that you're only going to have to start working on the mental health side of things. And, you know, yeah, I'll reach there. God forbid that you ever have to do it. We'd be here to help too if anybody wants to reach out and talk. But yeah, we're here. We're ready. Canada's only level 4 plate, and we're looking forward to putting more into the market here as soon as we can.
One of the other things that we do, and this comes from a company that I used to work for, is doesn't matter what capacity you're in. If you're wearing one of our products and you get tagged, we will replace it at no cost. Right? You know, not every department, not every person out there is going to, that's $1,000. Just go buy another set. Right? Obviously, we would love to have that as a statistic. But our first and foremost thing is that if you're wearing plates and you get tagged, shot, that we will replace those plates, no problem. Obviously, we want some kind of physical evidence with that. And yes, we know the difference between you shooting your plates and getting shot. That goes for anybody that is legally allowed to buy our product. We do have some confirmed saves in the Ukraine, but some of that is sensitive enough that we can't really share that. And that sounds like a bit of a marketing play. But their life is more important than our bonus points for being able to show something on the internet.
They're still serving right now.
Right. So, but yeah, so that's a big thing. As much as we are a business, our primary function with creating this brand was to get good quality product out to people that need it and fast. Our turnaround time for manufacturing, because everything is done in Canada, is very fast. So we hope to be able to service those environments. And as much as some of our law enforcement customers are not super happy that we do sell to the public, we have no problem selling legal products to people that are of the public, non-law enforcement or government. Again, that's a choice that I made personally because I don't think there is a reason to not sell armor to the public because bad guys don't care about the law. So we're not selling to bad guys. We're selling to regular people. Again, not everybody in law enforcement understands that or agrees with that, but we do, and that's our position on selling body armor to the public. As long as it's legal for you to own, we will sell it to you.
Fantastic. Yeah. Earl, why don't you take a minute and plug yourself?
Okay.
I just got you right off guard there, didn't you?
I was like, I was reading the comments because there were some really good comments actually. But anyway, so I'm the owner and operator of Phaseline Green Tactical. We provide training to civilians, law enforcement, and military in everything. I do threat assessments. I do security audits. I do firearms and use of force training. I provide advice on you name it. I do threat assessments surrounding school violence and workplace violence, that type of stuff. When it comes to firearms training, I travel across the country. I offer training in basic and advanced handgun, basic and advanced shotgun, basic and advanced carbine, those types of things, vehicle CQB, low light environment shooting, you name it. I kind of do it. So that's really what I do. And I'm willing to travel, like I said. And if someone wants to see me come out and do a course, let me know. We'll work with a range in your area, and I'm more than willing to come out. And actually, if you set the course up, if you're the person who sets the course up, I'll give you a free slot on the course, and we'll have your friends and you on the course, and we'll just do a great job. We'll have a good time.
Awesome. Where do people find you, Earl?
So www.phaselinegreen.tactical.ca. We're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, and we have our website. And I'm more than willing, if people want to PM me or whatever, by all means. And even regarding the conversation that we had tonight, I'm more than willing to answer any questions anybody has and help them out if they're looking at discussing armor, if their agency is looking at discussing armor. I'm going to jump into that. I've also made a commitment to work with Simon and Sean on trying to launch Aratech into the law enforcement market and getting into the hands of the people that need it. Yeah, that's me right there.
There you go. Awesome. Well, guys,
thank you guys so much.
Yeah, thank you.
This has been great. I'm just giddy right now.
There's just too much to fit into one episode, so we're gonna.
Oh my god, yeah! I mean, I could go for another couple of hours here. We should definitely pick a couple of other topics. As you know, we have a couple of other brands I would love to get involved in. Just sort of talking about what we do. I mean, our primary thing across all of the brands and our we have a thing called the Redacted Group, which is basically a group of companies that we work together. We have a manufacturing facility here at CFB Trenton, where we do a lot of stuff together, kind of a little bit of a bat cave kind of scenario where we have everything from engineers to textiles to 3D printing, investment molding, special body armor related stuff, a lot of things going on. It's quite a unique thing. I tried this several years ago with another group of people, but too many egos involved. So it's pretty good. Maybe because we're all older, it's better. But there's a lot of things that we got going on. One thing we all have in common is we want to make high quality stuff that works, that's innovative, and that's made in Canada. And I don't mean assembled in Canada. I mean as close to maple syrup as you can get. So there's a lot of things to talk about there. One of the things that my other business partner, James, has said is that Canada is too expensive to make cheap shit. That's what China's for. So let's make good shit. And that's basically what we do. We make lots of good shit. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, folks, before we seal this one up, please consider supporting us by heading over to storiedknives.com. That's storiedknives.com, and pick yourself up a Gardner knife. We think this is one of the best survival type everyday fixed blade knives available for a very reasonable cost. We're pretty proud of this guy. Working the YouTube grind pays less than running a lemonade stand, and doing what we do to try to bring interesting stuff to our audiences takes up almost all of our combined Canada carbon tax rebate checks. Thank goodness we're saving the people with taxes. So please go and have a look at a great knife. We're confident that it'll be on your side for a lifetime. Storiedknives.com. If you are in the East and you want to save yourself a little bit on shipping, I think there's still some over on cdnprecision.com. They're in the East, so you'll save yourself a little bit on shipping there if you'd like to go there as well. And as always, you guys can check out the show on facebook.com/BS podcast. You can find our website, bspodcast.ca. You can email us, info@bspodcast.ca. Email Derek and Mike, the Banyak boys, specifically Banyak, that's BANYAK @bspodcast.ca, and we're also on the Instagrams and the what's it called, Rumble and everything else. Just search for Ballistically Speaking Podcast. So brings us to the end of the show. A massive thank you, as always, to all of our sponsors and all of our listeners. Without you guys, we wouldn't have a show in the first place. We're talking about Shane and Steve, Miles, Carey and Cappy, Duncan and Rob, Phil Odell, Doug and Nisa, Vanya and Carly, Oscar and JR. Thank you all an immeasurable amount, and thank you very much to Earl and Sean and Simon for coming on. And I know you guys have been in contact with Mike. We got to keep you guys in contact with Mike so we can schedule another episode so you guys can come on for another 2 hours and 45 minutes so that we can fill more airtime and have some more interesting conversations.
Awesome.
So thank you guys very much, and I guess we'll see everybody next week. Hey,
you bet.
Yeah.
All right.
But some of these bullets, as you saw, have an incendiary device on the tip of it, which is a heat-seeking device.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it.
Welcome to your weekly dose of BS, the Ballistically Speaking podcast.